Folks, hear me back there? Welcome to the TriMet board meeting. For those of you who've not been here before, maybe watching on television, we have a public forum before every board meeting. Starts at 9 o'clock, and we limit it to usually to 45 minutes to allow folks to address the board on anything that may be on the agenda or of concern related to TriMet. And as we've done in the past, if it's not something TriMet is involved with, we'll try to have staff get a hold of, get them steered to the right place to answer their questions. We also will try to respond and ask the general manager and staff to respond to anything we hear if possible this morning. I will point out that, again, people who we have on the list signed up before the meeting here this morning. We have 17 people who signed up this morning, so we have a number of folks who want to talk to us. And because we have 45 minutes, and I think it'd be hard with 3 minutes apiece to meet that, but I'm going to ask you to please be as brief as you can so everybody has the time to be able to talk to the board this morning. And so I will limit it to three minutes, and I'll try to hold you to that. So if you extend over, I'm going to ask you to close as quickly as possible. If you have written materials, please get those to the folks up here, and they'll make sure that all copies of any of that material are given to us and become part of our record. Y'all ready to begin here? All right, so what I'm going to do is call the folks up two at a time, and again ask you to adhere to the 3-minute rule. There's a timer there that'll go from green to yellow to red. I think 30 seconds when it goes to yellow, is that right? Before the time to wrap up. So that's just a warning. So the first two we have are Vince Granato and Neil Gulligson. We have a number of folks who want to talk about some of the lines that we're talking about adding in our service enhancement. So good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks very much for having me here. My name is Vince Granato. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Port of Portland. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. You know, the Port and TriMet, we've had a long history and a partnership over time. Obviously, bringing the Red Line out to the airport, which took a significant amount of creativity years ago to make that happen. We're working with the staff today on double tracking out at the Red Line station to improve the operational efficiency. We've got some 82nd Avenue overcrossing that we're working with your team on as well. And I would like to call out just one of the staff members too, Jeff Owen, who is the vice chair of the PDX Community Advisory Committee, which we do as part of all things PDX. It's our public engagement process. And I really appreciate his time and commitment to PDX and helping us really remain the best airport in the nation. And I also acknowledge Travis and the work that he did for us last year on the Troutdale Master Plan too. So we have a long partnership here. You know, at the airport, we are an origin and destination airport. And we are a 24-hour operation. We have folks that are coming and going all hours of the morning, and many of our traveling public, as well as the employees, are trying to get access and are using the light rail line. It's a challenge, though, when the system is closed between midnight and 5 a.m. for service. We understand that. So I'm here really to offer support for the line coming out to 82nd and out to the airport in particular. We have employees working for TSA, the concessionaires, who are there at 3:30 in the morning, and they just have limited opportunities to get there. There used to be a bus line out to the airport many years ago, and so we have a workforce that really relies heavily on that line. We believe the 82nd Avenue alternative helps serve the needs of many who live in close proximity to the PDX. And for us, we're very concerned about the service frequency. We believe the half hour is the right timing rather than an hourly service. We think it'll be much more utilized at that point if that frequency happens. This applies to the travelers as well, and we do have a number of travelers. We probably have 6-7% of the traveling public who uses light rail to get to the airport, and we think that's a great metric for us, and we'd love to increase that. You know, the airport has significant economic growth, and we also know that growth doesn't benefit everybody equally. We know reliability is important, and for us, we want to make sure, and we really applaud and support your efforts surrounding the low-income fares. as an employer that serves the public, we're obligated to serve all of our constituents and not just those who have the opportunity to drive. So we appreciate and support your work on the low-income fares as well. So again, we're here very much supporting the light rail line or the bus line out to the airport, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment and appreciate your support.
Thank you very much.
I can go.
Mr. Gullickson?
I should just say ditto. My name is Neil Gullickson. I'm a senior manager for FedEx Ground out in Troutdale. I have submitted a formal request for expansion of the times that the new 81 is out there. We've got 1,000 employees at FedEx Ground, and the majority of them start at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, work until about 7 a.m. So I wanted to formally thank you for putting the 81 in there. It's definitely helped our employees, but just wanted to submit a request for expanded hours as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. The next two we have are Gene Harrison and Michael Harrison. Any relation here?
Oh, nice to see you. Haven't seen him in a long time.
Go ahead, Gene.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for letting me testify. I'm going to be speaking on the Ordinance 350 about expanding a service over the next year or two. Over a year ago, we sent a letter to TriMet supporting the expansion of the Line 24 over the Fremont Bridge, and we've been working with neighborhoods and individuals on the east side of the river to help make that happen. We both see the benefit of doing that. I have a letter that I've submitted, and I'm going to just briefly read a few pieces of it, not the whole thing. So you should have, don't try to follow along. As you know, the northwest corner of the city of Portland is experiencing tremendous growth. We also have large industrial tracts that are redeveloping, the Conway site specifically, but also Esco and Montgomery Park have redevelopment plans. Employment has grown around Good Samaritan as well, and we're seeing a lot more density in what we call the transitional area, the northeast corner of our neighborhood, and of course also in the Pearl. And as you know, another boom is taking place in the Vancouver-Williams corridor, so we really see the need for increased transit service between these two areas, especially linking the two hospitals. The Transit Futures Plan has included the Line 24, and we're very supportive of that, as well as supportive of the increase in span of service and frequency for the Line 20. I think both of those are going to help us immensely in reducing traffic and parking issues in our neighborhood. We understand that there's some logistical challenges to getting over the Fremont Bridge when it's congested, but we've been assured that that can be worked out, and we're looking forward to having that service start. For us, this is part of our overall strategy to work with our Parking Stakeholder Advisory Committee, which I've recently joined, which advises PBOT on how to reduce parking and traffic issues in our neighborhood through a parking management plan. We still have hundreds, if not thousands, of more units of housing coming online in the next few years. So we welcome the increase in the Line 20 Burnside service frequency, and we believe that the Line 24 extension will be vital to supporting our neighborhood, and especially along 18th and 19th, which doesn't have service today, and is a sort of a concentration of elderly, low income, and disabled persons. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr.
Good
Harrison.
morning, members of the board. I'm Michael Harrison. I'm with OHSU, and I appreciate your time this morning to give me the opportunity to testify. It would probably take an hour or several hours to describe all the partnerships that we have with TriMet, and today I'm just here to speak to a very small part. Unless you want me to take an hour, we'd have to shut that thing off.
Not this morning.
There you go.
All right.
So as Oregon's academic health center, OHSU cares for many of the sickest families in Oregon, patients. we're also the city's largest employer. And at a time when incomes are becoming more and more divided between low income and high income in our country, it's also a privilege to be able to provide so many middle wage jobs at OHSU. One of the goals that we have as an institution is to ensure that our patients and their families and our employees can access OHSU regardless where they live in the region and whether or not they have access to a car. We're open 24 hours a day, given that we operate 3 hospitals on the Hill. So, and we regularly survey our employees trying to figure out how we can help them with their commute. 1,300 of our employees who choose to drive indicate that they would like to take transit, but that they either start their day or end their day when transit service isn't provided to the Hill. Because of that, I'm really excited to be able to support the enhanced service of lines 61, 64, 66, and 68 that's being currently proposed in order to help our shift workers be able to access transit instead of driving. It's only through sort of efforts such as this that we're going to be able to sort of meet our goal as an institution, which is to go from 38% drive alone down to 30% over the next decade. So that's sort of the North Star we're shooting to, and we really appreciate TriMet thinking creatively in your board's work to help us get there. So thank you so much for your service to the community. And if you have any questions?
I have one question for you.
Yeah, Michael. When they finish construction down at the bottom of the hill, how many employees do you envision?
So
Like Cancer Center, the new.
So there will be about 700 employees in the Night Cancer Research Building. There will be over 1,000 in the Center for Health and Healing, and if you add the existing number of employees, it'll be several thousand. I can get you specific numbers on employment, but there's a few thousand.
That's good enough.
Okay. I mean, what's interesting just to note, or at least interesting from OHSU's perspective, is that right now we have about 12,000 employees up on the Hill and only a few thousand down in South Waterfront. But when we're fully built out, we'll have probably equal numbers in both places. So there is a lot of growth coming in the next decade in South Waterfront, which makes things like the Orange Line expansion and other things so meaningful to our ability to continue to grow.
Okay.
Good question.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, the next two are Stephen Butler, who's on our TAC committee, and Rick Bachto, says Affiliation Division Midway. So please have a seat. Mr. Bachto here? I don't see him. Why don't I call up Samir Sayed, and I've got written here Thomas Thames, is that what? Come on up, please. Are you both together? Well, we'll go ahead, wait there, we'll bring you both up together, okay? Mr. Butler, nice to see you again.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Board President Warner, members of the board, and Mr. Kelsey. I apologize if I stumble a little bit today. I was unable to put my notes in Braille, so I'm going to do my best to struggle through this. But if I do pause or if I do stumble, I hope you'll give me a little pardon on that.
You bet.
And what I would like to do today, I want to talk to you. Well, first off, I am the chairman of the Planning Commission for the City of Gresham. However, I'd like to point out that I am not here in the capacity of the Gresham Planning Commission. I am here as an individual user of TriMet. And so I would like to, first off, I'd like to address the scheduled service improvements that are in store for 2019. But for the benefit of a lot of the public in attendance here, I know that you've probably all seen all of this and read this several times, but there are members of the public that are here that have not. So I'd like to real quick review part of TriMet's vision. You have your vision, which is to do our part in making our community the best place to live in the country. Then you have as our mission. The mission is to provide valued transit service that is safe, dependable, and easy to use. Then the values. Do the right thing by being responsive, inclusive, and accountable. Line 20 becoming a 24-hour service plugs right into the guiding principles. Serving Mount Hood Community College with improved availability for residents of the Rockwood area and also those coming into the Gresham Transit Center. I think there's no one on this board that would deny the fact that education is of vital importance. And rather than to put barriers to gaining that education, we need to remove them whenever possible. Giving the extended service makes it more available for students to access Mount Hood Community College, as well as areas west of Gresham. Improved access to, the hours will also improve access to major employment centers throughout all of the area that TriMet serves, as well as improving areas for shopping and healthcare. Rockwood particularly is a food desert. And so people that are having to shop from there, they're looking for those extended hours. I would ask, however, that there's one thing that you're going to see an increase in ridership as the riders become more secure and feel more comfortable about being there in the later hours. You're going to see the numbers rise. I would ask, however, that you look at one thing that I think has been overlooked, and that's the TriMet lift service. It has limited hours, and I would hope that you would look at the possibility of extending the hours that the lift service is available as well, bearing in mind the fact that simply because somebody is disabled does not exempt them from working shift work. And if they're limited to getting to and from work based upon the fact that they have limited access, it's just another barrier that we put up. So I would hope that in the face of acting in an equitable fashion, that we look at least providing that service extended hours as well. Line 81, that's awesome. As a planner, I look at the fact that people come to us and say, we want to develop, but there's no infrastructure, there's no service there yet. And then we tell them, I'm so sorry then.
No, that's all right. Keep going and let's wrap up if you could.
I'll wrap up really quickly. We like to make certain that we can tell these projects that come out that you are going to be there to help them get their employees in and out. And then the last thing I'd like to say, I would like to personally extend to all of you the opportunity to come on out to Gresham. Get on the number 20 with me and ride from Rockwood into downtown historic Gresham and see the people that you're going to be impacting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony this morning. Go ahead.
Mr. Butler,
Yes, sir.
make sure you thank your state representatives and senators in your district.
I will.
They
They do a good job.
yes, they do.
Thank you very much.
All right, Samir and Thomas, want to both come up? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I was here almost a month ago testifying against awarding a sole source contract to Portland Patrol, Inc. And I'm here with our member today, and he will introduce himself.
Good morning. My name is Officer Thomas Thomas.
Ah,
I've been with the Locals 49 for 6 years. I'm the security officer of TriMet.
Yeah. So Thomas and other officers were, he was with our with the local member for the last 5 years, but working at the TriMet for the last 6 years. I'll skip the introduction and go directly to the statement. We believe TriMet current expansion of security with Portland Patrol, Inc. is the wrong approach for 3 major reasons. First, we support the call from ATU and OPAL for Rider Advocate Program to focus on de-escalating conflict and providing support to riders. Security officers with a good jobs have a role to play in securing our transit system, but security-only approach around fare collection puts security officers into interaction with the community members that do not support security officers, riders, or communities. A community-centered rider advocate program is a complement to existing system that would enhance safety and usability of our transit system. Second, security officers here in Portland metro area have spent their hard-earned money, time, and energy to build a security officers union, improve working condition, provide a basic standard of living for all security officers here in Portland. Unionized security officers, whether working for G4S or any of the many other responsible union security companies, currently enjoying guaranteed yearly wage increase, affordable health care benefit, workplace protection, and a better working condition. Prior forming a union, security officers, including those who work at the TriMet site, went without a pay increase for years. Officers went without affordable health care coverage and struggled to cope with unbearable work conditions like working in inclement weather without adequate uniforms. Only 5 years ago, security officers formed their union and have steadily made improvement on their job since then. Awarding a sole source contract on TriMet site to non-union contract while there is already an effective and responsible security provider servicing the account seems intentionally to undercut the living and workplace standard unionized security officers have built in Portland area in the last 5 years. It is an insult to unionized security officers here in Portland, in particular for G4S security officers who work hard day in, day out to secure TriMet. Our regional transit should promote fair wages for working people, whether they are directly employee or employee of subcontractors. Instead, TriMet is participating in a race to the bottom where workers lose out in the long run and are subjected to the whim of their employers' desire for profit. Our union asks that TriMet make and renew a commitment to our community over private or profit. Finally, we question the legitimacy of the decision to award a sole source contract to a private security firm rather than using a competitive bidding process. TriMet must ensure that public funds are spent wisely and do so in a way that is transparent and in compliance with the law. As you know, state contract law requires TriMet and other agencies to use a competitive bid in most cases. One of the few exemptions allows is when only one company can afford a certain service or product. We do not believe TriMet have provided sufficient justification for the sole source contract awarded to Portland Patrol. The stated justification was that Portland Patrol has a unique relationship with the Portland Police Bureau. We believe this idea is not founded in fact. On contrary, it sounded too much like cozy relationship or old boys network.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up if you're
Okay, I will wrap it up. We believe that G4S and other responsible private security firms should have been given a chance to present their qualification for this work, both in the interest of the public goods and to ensure workers on our transit system are treated with respect. G4S also has a long-standing relationship with the Portland Police and member of G4S, our member are certified protected officers, have a military and police background. We support the demand of OPL and ATU that TriMet investigate all options on how our regional transit system can be kept secure and accessible for all our community and riders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas. Oh, guess, all right. All right, so the next two then are Teresa Soto and R.A. Fonts. Good morning.
Morning.
I'll leave it to you. Go ahead, Mr. Fonts.
Good morning. My name's R.A. Fonts. Three things about autonomous vehicles. They're almost here. They will attract transit riders, and buses will become cheaper to operate relative to trains. They are almost here, really. The self-driving Chinese BRT, shown on the first page of your handout, is coming online. Low-speed autonomous vehicles, shuttle buses, entered service in San Ramon, California earlier this month. Waymo is now giving rides to Phoenix area residents in on-demand AVs on public streets in traffic without human backup drivers. Now, early flying machines regularly fell out of the skies, often killing pilots, passengers, and sometimes people on the ground. Yet aviation advanced, and now flying across continents and oceans is routine. With their promise of eventually putting an end to most traffic carnage, AVs are coming, and TriMet needs to prepare. You can expect that many who ride TriMet will switch to privately operated on-demand AVs. What will be the taxpayer's reaction to a large permanent ridership drop, especially since AV owners will be paying taxes instead of eating them? Carpooling will be in AV operators' own interest, and if successful, on-demand AVs could absorb all transit riders while actually reducing congestion. If TriMet survives the AV transition, it will have to automate its own fleet for safety reasons, if nothing else. With its 2-car limit, MAX will lose any chance of being cost effective. Please refer to the 3rd page of your handout with a chart. You'll notice that after 31 years of operation, MAX still is not cost effective compared with BRT. On the right side, it shows that the maximum load sections, they only average around 19% of capacity, and that's pathetic. TriMet isn't doing anything wrong here, it's just that the demand is not there. With its relatively high fixed cost, light rail's outlook is bleak. The point is that you have to get AVs into the planning discussion. Please consider the grid on the 2nd page. Things in the green quadrant, like increasing span, could make sense both now and in the future. Those in red, like streetcar with its whopping $3.30 per passenger mile operating expense, don't make sense now and they're not likely to in the future. The hard ones are in the yellow. These are the ones that are going to be very difficult. The 19th century is long gone, and its fixed route, fixed schedule, big box transit systems have been on life support for decades. Unless this board and this general manager can come up with a smaller, more narrowly focused, and far more efficient TriMet, the public just might decide to pull the plug. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Appreciate it. Good morning, Teresa. Nice to see
Hello,
you.
buenos días. Good morning, TriMet board members, General Manager Kelsey, Kelly, Tracy, and Shelley. I am Teresa Casey Soto. I am bus and MAX dependent. I'm a medical interpreter, and I get to my assignments by bus. Lines 9, 17, 73, 71, 19, and 20, and 72 are the buses that I ride on a regular basis. Now, before I continue, I want to tell the new board members that Keith Schultz of Opal Bus Riders Unite, who's not here yet, and myself are now into our 8th year of advocating for improved bus service. Hooray for us. This morning, I'm asking you, the members of the TriMet Board of Directors, to reinstate the Rider Advocate Program and that you follow the lead of city residents who are engaged in supporting transit-dependent riders and in making suggestions for improvements. Last September, Keith Schultz and I met with John Gardner to discuss concerns that we have about the safety of drivers and riders, and about the need for riders to be made aware of what I'm calling bus riding culture. Your fare needs to be ready when you board. You pay for one seat. Please pick up your feet so that passengers can safely board and deboard the bus. Stand behind the bus driver, and that includes bus drivers. You know, you do that sometimes too. And directly in front of the back door blocks access for those boarding and deboarding. Please smoke away from the shelters and not inside them. These are examples of what I'm calling bus riding culture. The Rider Advocate Program can be a way to coalesce the community of bus riders, supporters, and stakeholders into a cohesive movement so that we can move forward in motivating and encouraging Portland citizens to leave their cars and take public transportation. The Rider Advocate Program could do a lot to dispel some of the fear that still keeps some residents from riding the bus. I still hear how dangerous it is to ride the bus. I just heard that yesterday. In closing, I would like to ask all of you, like I always have in previous years, on the board, everybody here, to please take the bus and MAX for all of your daily and social needs for one whole month. And then you will understand why I'm still here 8 years later. TriMet. And I'm going to say we can be the very best. I used to say you. Bus riders have no other bus company I appreciate having the bus and the MAX to continue living my wonderful life. It's time for TriMet and riders to move the company forward together. And thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you guys.
So I suspect we're going to have some other folks who want to talk about what we're doing in safety and security. Maybe I'll make sure that our general manager can kind of address some of the ideas we have working with TIAC and expanded TIAC. Maybe you can talk about that. The next two are Charles Ormsby and Charles Bridgestone Johnson, I think. How about just Charles Johnson? All right. Go ahead, Charles.
Yes, my name is Charles Ormsby. I live in the Lake Oswego Urban Growth Management area in Clackamas County with a Portland address. I'm here to thank the board for taking action and directing your planners, Tom Mills and Mr. Nicholas, to survey the issue I brought forth to the board last month regarding the northwest corner of the intersection of State and B. The letter is very appropriate. I'm putting that into an infographic, and it's probably one of the more complex ones I've had to deal with ever. TriMet needs to communicate with Metro, with planners, with engineers down the line to the neighborhood level and ensure that there's effective communication about the capacities and capabilities of intersections. But again, I thank you for the letter that you had produced. Lake Oswego needs to take action if they choose to, but it's going to be a long fight on this because they're in a state of must to get their North Anchor project. And communication has to take place between transit riders, bus drivers, planners, engineers, public officials, all down the line. In fact, I'm trying to create a Riders Atlas or Line Atlas to do such for Line 35, which has had too much change in my lifetime since TriMet was conceived back in 1969. So I'll be in touch with you next month. I'm looking for a resurrection of a orthographic view of TriMet buses for each one that you're driving, which are the front, aft, starboard, port, and plan view of a TriMet bus, and the capabilities of its turning radius, so you can get drivers to a transit center on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles, two.
Good morning, directors. For the record, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And I'm a little bit concerned, maybe later on TriMet Council Shelley Devine can help us with this. I'm a little bit concerned that your plan is actually to have Elaine Chao and Donald Trump come and take over. I'm not sure exactly what the quorum requirements are. And of course, many of us that are, the eloquent lady earlier spoke about the passion of TriMet riders to make this a truly excellent service to improve our already good lives. But we have to have questions about the management and really, what is this mess that you've drawn Doug Kelsey into from Canada? Poor man. The stupid and wrong-headed plan of having 8-year terms of TriMet board members appointed by the governor, I know that's none of your fault. I appreciate your service under ORS 267. But when you have 8-year terms, a wise structure would never leave us with a board where all of you will be gone in 2 years. Some of you are already gone and you don't even know it. The reason I say that is because if we look at the website, 2 of you have termed out. Now it's possible a secret covert memo, Deborah Kafori's wife is, I think, chief of staff for Governor Kate Brown. So maybe there's a secret covert memo that says the website is wrong and 2 of you didn't term out at the end of February 2018. But it's very hard for me as a rider to have confidence in TriMet, a system where the highest traffic stop, Pioneer Square, has 0 automated signs to tell people about problems and delays. You drill through the ground and you close the stop to put in the hop card things, but there's no automated signs that tell people when the train is coming because you hate poor people who can't have a phone or only have a flip phone. You don't want them to be able to look up at Pioneer Square and see that the MAX is delayed or there's a switch problem at Steel Bridge. So there's no automated signs at the two busiest stops, Pioneer Place Mall and Pioneer Square. Now, hopefully, now that Neil McFarlane is done torturing the poor people that ride TriMet, our new general manager can do something about that. But when we look at this list of 7 district managers, or 7 district people, I appreciate Dr. Bethel's 8 years of service. It ended last month. According to the website, I could be wrong again. It could be that whoever's in charge of keeping people informed isn't doing that. Some people think it's a good strategy to balance a plus with a negative. So I will say thank you for adding another TriMet Twitter, TriMet Alerts Twitter. So there's some serious issues on our plate here. I look forward to those getting addressed publicly and clearly. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I think you may want to talk with our general counsel about what the statute actually says, because there's some differences from what you said. That I think you're incorrect in some of your...
I'm just going by your website that tells us that 2 of you up there have termed out last month.
I think you need to read the law to understand what that means. Thank you very much. Jonathan Hunt and Shirley Block, both from ATU. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to the board and to Doug and Shelley. Quit smiling over there. It's not illegal. We're here to stand with Opal Bus Riders United and our community partners in calling on you to fully support a new community-based rider advocate. Safety and security on transit is at a crisis. Operators are being punched, kicked, spit on almost on a daily basis. In 2009, before 2009, when the Rider Advocate program was cut out, we felt more secure and more safety on riding buses and MAX. The Rider Advocates was trained and they were community-based. They knew the systems, they knew the routes, and they were family-orientated. They helped and assisted. Not putting the police short, because a police officer can help, but unfortunately, when you're out with a passenger on a platform or at a bus stop, police get a call, they are going to leave. The rider advocates will remain there with you and help you in any way possible. They're not only there to diffuse situation, they assist the passengers. On the MAX, as a supervisor, we've got people with kids, bags, trying to get on the bus. They get up and they assist these passengers. And what I'm here to ask today is that the Rider Advocate program is a needed program that should be out there and should be reformed, and that's what I'm asking today. That's my first ask. You know I'm greedy. My second ask, Doug, is to you. I need a regular monthly meeting with you, standard. I know you have a busy schedule, so do I, but I'm sure you can squeeze out at least a couple hours out of 30-day period for me. That's what my ask is for you. And you can answer now.
Happy to do so.
Okay, we'll get that scheduled, and when you're on vacation back in Canada or wherever, Shelley will be glad to step in for you, won't you, girlfriend? Okay, that's my ask for today. But I am serious about the Rider Advocates and the meeting too, the monthly meeting. I will look for email today, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, 3 minutes.
Members of the board. For the record, my name is Jonathan Hunt. I'm the Vice President of Local 757. I'm here today because workers and riders are experiencing a safety crisis on transit, and we need to take a bold action to solve it. We stand with our partners at Opal, Environmental Justice Oregon, and Bus Riders Unite in calling on you to support a new vision of community-led rider advocate programs. Rider advocates were an extension of TriMet's operation division. They served a valuable information contact and resource about local neighborhoods, the city of Portland, places of interest, and current local and regional events and activities. They shared responsibilities for coordinating with and otherwise assisting TriMet operators, dispatchers, road and rail supervisors, fare inspectors, security personnel, maintaining a pleasant environment for each boarding customer. And the program represented a model community partnership for TriMet. This isn't a spin, this isn't my spin on a program, by the way. Everything that I just said was lifted from TriMet's own internal documents about this program. The reality is, the Rider Advocate program worked. It made transit safer, and it did it in a community-centered way. The way our union fought to preserve this program every time it was on the chopping block. In 2003, for example, we delivered a petition signed by hundreds of TriMet operators with a simple message: Rider Advocates make our jobs safer. In 2009, the same year it was eliminated, by the way, the program won the City of Portland's Public Safety Planner Partner Award from the Office of the Neighborhood Involvement. They celebrated the Rider Advocates' efforts to create a safer environment for all who ride TriMet by using conflict resolution skills and de-escalating techniques. The city specifically called out the workers' rider advocates to support the vulnerable riders, especially the elderly, folks with disabilities, youth, and people experiencing mental crisis. Unfortunately, the agency eliminated the program in 2009, supposedly due to budget cuts. Instead of investing in proven, effective, community-centered solutions, we invested heavily in expanding the presence of contracted security guards and transit police on bus and MAX. And yet, our operators and riders are no safer. And many of our riders, especially those from the undeserved communities, report that they feel less, I'll wrap up.
Thank you.
Report that they feel less safe as a result of the security theater at TriMet. When we say safety, we don't mean a system which is efficient and effective at punishing folks after an incident happens. We mean a system which makes everyone feel more secure while reducing and eliminating violent incidents. That requires us to think creatively and to deepen our relationship with the communities that we serve. And the best way to do that is through the renewed Rider Advocate program. I ask you to work with Opal, ATU, and the community to make this happen. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. All right, the next two is Hui Ong and maybe another special guest you have with you, and David Bouchard.
I'll go. Morning, members of the board. This is David Bouchard. I am with Opal Environmental Justice and Bus Riders Unite, and I want to talk today about two things. So I'm going to use the best time as I can here. First is the Rider Advocate Program. I, as a bus rider, am very supportive of bringing this program back. I had never really heard of anything like this until I moved to Portland, to be quite honest with you. It's a really innovative program that I think would do a lot of good. It would boost TriMet's image nationally, even possibly internationally. I think it would be a great talking point for TriMet to show that you are still a leader in our community. And sometimes that does not always happen. I think sometimes we've fallen short of that, and it's time to catch up and be that leader and provide this program to make our transit system safer and make our riders feel more comfortable and actually proactively interacting with staff, because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of discomfort around approaching police officers, but rider advocates, yeah, she knows it, right? She can hear that. But anyway, I think the rider advocates would be a much more approachable presence on the system and still be as effective. Now, the other thing I want to switch gears a little bit to is with bus service, and I've been speaking with my friend Kim Marks, and who shared with me some data collected, some survey data collected by the Columbia Corridor Association. I'm going to email you the board the results from that survey, but I want to go over them real quick if I can. It was a survey of 18 businesses in the Columbia Corridor last year. I believe it was conducted by the CCA. And it really just emphasizes the need for better transit in that area and connecting to that area. For example, most surveyed had inadequate or no service. Almost half, 44%, want better service. And there's clearly a need for better weekend service within the corridor and connecting to the corridor. Over half of the businesses surveyed have Saturday shifts. 22% of businesses with shifts have Sunday shifts as well, and that's not a huge percentage, but that's almost a quarter of the businesses. And this is just a small sample size, so that really warrants consideration of more Sunday service. Most of the businesses, 88%, operate shifts outside of daytime hours, indicating the need for increased service spans. And this is really important on this line 74. I believe, Linda, you'd mentioned, Director Simmons, you'd mentioned last year, I'll wrap up it very quickly, the last meeting that you were wondering, if that service was sufficient. This would indicate that it is not. It needs, we need buses to be starting earlier, around 5 a.m., ending, after 8 when shifts end, so that people can get to and from shifts comfortably and conveniently, so they're not having to rush for that 8 o'clock bus. There should be service after that. So I will share that with you. I'm going to wrap up, but I just want to emphasize the need for better service in Outer East Portland and connecting to that corridor, because that's a really hot topic.
Thank you, David.
Thank you to the TriMet board for the opportunity to speak. My name is Hui Ong, and I'm honored to serve as the executive director of Opal Environmental Justice Oregon. We organize low-income people and people of color to achieve a safe and healthy lived environment. This is Rosalia Galing, my daughter, and she's super excited to be at our first TriMet board. I'm actually very inspired by the students of Parkland, Florida, who recent leadership has sparked a national conversation about real solution to mass violence. Whenever a school shooting occurs, some misguided individuals suggest that we should arm teachers or place more police in schools. As the rest of us recognize that as ridiculous, we recognize the dangers of placing more guns in the situation. We recognize the absurdity of deputizing people in our society to use violence towards others. Yet it is the same flawed logic that led to TriMet's over-dependence on security companies and transit police in response to violent incidences. Militarization of our societies is increasing and increasingly problematic. We have become used to seeing riot police during demonstrations, used to seeing cameras on every corner, used to having our privacy invaded upon by social media and by our government. This is all theater, not real security. Increased transit police and private security creates the appearance of safety and expends a huge amount of resources. Money that could go towards easing inequalities. It's time to end the militarization of our public spaces and places. Instead of creating the appearance of security, support us and our allies as we create a transit system that is truly safe. Rider advocates will facilitate positive relationships between riders and drivers. We curate a beloved community on the buses and trains. As a real community where people know one another, talk to one another, and support one another is how we prevent the next violent act from taking place. Bus Riders Unite and Amalgamated Transit Union will work with our communities to bring back the Rider Advocate program in a manner that makes people in our community safer. We invite TriMet to follow our lead on this endeavor and to help provide the resources to make this program into paid positions and fully fund like it was before it was cut in 2009. We want to see this agency, and specifically Doug Kelsey, take real steps in working with frontline communities to improve the safety of our communities, and we are here today offering that very opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So the final two I have signed up are Deborah Olson with Bus Rider United from the Gresham area, and Riza Farhoudi with PONA, and wants to talk about House Bill 2017. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Olson. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I live in Gresham. I live right off of Burnside and Shattuck Way. We have very limited bus service. In fact, we have no bus service. I live in senior housing, 190 units. Many of my neighbors won't consider riding the MAX because they don't feel safe. So it's probably time to institute the Rider Advocate program again. Some of my neighbors can't make it to the MAX stop. On a good day, I can get there in 15 minutes. 2 of the sidewalks to get there are not even paved. I don't know why we don't have a bus that goes down Burnside. I don't know why it can't turn on 257th, circle around, come down Division, turn on 202nd, and do a loop around back up Burnside. There are many businesses that I can't access in the Gresham area because it's not busable. Same thing for my neighbors. Several of my neighbors, as I said, they're kind of trapped because they have no bus service. We do have the lift. I have lift services. But there's nothing like waiting for 30 minutes for the lift, spending a couple hours riding around, waiting at least a half hour after your drop-off time for a pickup time of 30 minutes to ride around 2 to 3 hours to come home. And if you have a medical appointment, the lift will not stop and let you pick up your prescription. At least with bus service, I could get off to the pharmacy at Rite Aid, get my prescription, and get back on a bus. So we need some bus service out in the East County area in Gresham off of Burnside. As I said, there are safety issues. I think if we had bus services, my neighbor Dennis Yamiski would not have been killed 2.5 months ago with a hit-and-run driver on his way home from work. I don't hold TriMet responsible for that, but we do need bus service out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I got one question, Deborah. So you were referencing, I mean, there are plenty of, I agree with you, of course. We certainly need more and more service on the east side because
the 20 bus is on Stark, which is a mile away.
Yeah, and then the 4
closest
over on
one is
Division.
Max, and the 4 is another 15 to 20 minute hike.
And
My
so-
oldest neighbor's 101. She's not getting to the Max.
So specifically, you just referenced. I mean, I know the challenges that we have. I know how far the 4 is. I live in Gresham Station.
Sure.
So I know those issues well and the challenges that we face there. Specifically on the Max piece, you referenced that 2 of the sidewalks to get to the Max are
On
not
Council, there's the first block from where my building is. It's paved. The next block on Council, no pavement. You take that turn on Civic, there's no pavement until you get almost a good portion, and then there's some sidewalk. So we have to walk in the street, pretty much. So it's just a big pile of dirt on the way to the Max.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Is that correct?
Yes, Reza. Good morning, TriMet Board, General Manager Kelsey. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Reza Farhoudi. I'm a Portland resident, and I'm also the Planning and Transportation Committee co-chair of the Pearl District Neighborhood Association. The PDNA, we previously wrote in enthusiastic support of the Line 24 extension to Goose Hollow. We think that is provide a critical connection across Fremont Bridge. It's a route that opened up so many opportunities for connections. It'll help people access jobs, retail, regional destinations in the Pearl and the Northwest. So we are in great favor of that line being put in as soon as possible. The only thing that I would ask for, I think, would be for more frequency and increased span. So evening and weekend service is critical. I can see a lot of people going to Timbers games, for example, being able to take that line home after a game. That'd be a really nice way to travel. And then also as an individual, I serve on TriMet's HB 2017 committee as a Portland rider representative. And as an individual, I'm here today to support all of the proposed improvements for in the city of Portland, such as Line 4, splitting Line 4 into the Line 2 and Line 4, which would really help improve reliability, I think, because it's such a long line. 24-hour service on Line 20 and the airport is critical to help late night employees, passengers, also late night bar patrons who want to be out and don't want to necessarily have to drive or take an expensive Uber ride. Also, Line 73, more frequency on that. It will help improve north-south service in an area that has critical need, an area with communities of concern. And so I think that all of these proposals should be accepted today as part of the new budget. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your service on the HB 2017 committee. That's going to be helpful and important to us moving forward. So with that concludes our public forum. It went over a little bit, but I didn't want to cut people off who had signed up. I don't know, we have maybe a few moments before we go into the meeting. Mr. General Manager, did you have any thoughts? I think I asked you maybe talk a little bit about safety and security, but I think we need to spend some quality time on that too here. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the board and public. Yeah, I think this is a really important issue about presence on the system overall. And as I'll speak about in a few minutes in the General Manager's report, I think one of the important venues for this is going to be our expanded TIAC that I had referenced as part of my the discussion around the selection of the General Manager process that came up. There is no doubt we need to improve presence on this system. And I think there's many ways to do that. I really welcome the comments around the Advocates Program. Personally, I need to learn more about what that is. Part of the expanded TIAC that we're going to look at is we're going to form a dedicated safety and security function underneath it. And I think that's where hopefully a lot of education and dialogue will go on around what are all the different ways that will help us collectively be successful dealing with safety security on the system. So I think this is a really important issue for this region and the service we provide. So I welcome those comments as well. I might also add just from the comments that were made by a number of the delegations this morning around the expanded service. I think just to remind people, that is only the start of what's to come with HB 2017, because it really hasn't fully kicked in yet. And so this is just part of our natural growth, so it's great to hear the feedback and also suggestions of how we adapt and modify going forward, and we need to keep listening to that. But there is a lot more to come, and so stay tuned, and please do keep bringing those comments forward. So, and when you're ready, I'm happy to move into the General Manager's comments report as well.
All right. Thank you very much for those comments. So yes, I will call the regular meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors of March 28th, 2018 to order. And the first order of business is the board reports. And so I'm going to turn first to Director Bauman for a report on Committee on Accessible Transportation, or CAT as we call it. Director
Yes,
Bauman?
good morning. The CAT met last week on March 21st, and here is a brief report on the events at that meeting. As we do every time we meet, the CAT had a report from the Transit Police. Lieutenant Rachel Andrew provided an update on Transit Police activity, including increased weekend mission assignments. There were also discussions about service animals, and one piece of advice was if there's any events of aggressive actions by animals brought on transit, the appropriate response is to call 911. Next, there was a report by Cindy Dibert and Bella Nguyen regarding fixed route certification training for bus operators. Next, Young Park gave a report on the bus stop classification system and discussed the process for improving amenities at bus stops, and he mentioned that a goal is to add 15 shelters per year to the TriMet system. Next, there was a report on Title VI and equity programs by Carl Green, and there was discussion in that report about perhaps creating some CAT representation on the TIAC committee. Next, there was a report on the planned elevator replacements along the MAX line at 60th Avenue, 82nd Avenue, and Hollywood Transit Center. Wendy Serrano reported that those stations are going to go through closures of the elevators for weeks at a time, and she talked about some of the efforts to mitigate the impacts, including additional staffing and shuttle buses. Next, there was a report on plans to replace Type 1 vehicles, and there was feedback from CAT members about the stanchion colors, whether they should be yellow or a stainless steel. There was a House Bill 2017 update, and finally a lift service delivery report from Eileen Collins, and that is the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Bellman? I see none. Thank you very much for your report. The next report is from Director Bethel. Great to see you back on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee. Do you have any reports this morning?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's good to be finally back out again.
Yeah.
TIAC's March meeting was focused on community engagement in the next phase of the TIAC program. Director of Planning and Policy walked TIAC through the upcoming HB 2017 open housings and listening sessions and took feedback on the structure of those meetings. TriMet's Director of Diversity and Transit Equity walked TIAC through the General Manager deliverables, which included expanding the membership and profile of TIAC, bringing on a new community outreach staff, creating a new Safety and Security Community Advisory Committee to work with TIAC on issues of transparency and equity, and analyzing TriMet's workforce diversity. Over the next few weeks, TriMet's Director of Diversity and Transit Equity will be meeting with each current TIAC member to update the charter and procedures while working to recruit new members for a fully expanded TIAC set to convene in this coming May. Good conversations at the meeting and a good meeting. I'll entertain any questions, but that's the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Bethel? I think TIAC's going to be busy, what I can see. So thank you very much for that report. Let's move on then to the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Prosser.
The Finance and Audit Committee met this morning. Dee and Nancy Young Oliver presented a briefing on priorities and policies alignment in the budget. It was kind of a snapshot in time because they're still working on some items, but they went through the goals from the strategic finance plan and pointed out several items in the proposed budget that will directly address those. We also got an update from Dee and Nancy on the refined capital budget and financing strategies. They've done a better job on projecting capital needs, and that allows lining up with resources and financing needs. So we got a briefing on that. And then the general manager gave us a quick briefing on the status of the search for a location for the 4th bus facility. So, any questions?
Any questions of Director Prosser? No, thank you very much. Good report. And then finally, I think we have one board member gone today who was going to give the report for the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. Mr. Prosser, Director Prosser, can you give that report?
Yes, I can.
Right.
I was unable to attend the last meeting, and Director Simmons attended in my place and left me 2 pages of notes on what was going on. So first they got a briefing from staff on the urban growth management decision and process update. There's been some changes to the process following some changes by the state legislature, primarily allowing smaller adjustments to the urban growth boundary to be done midway through the planning cycle without needing to do a full urban growth report. So there was more discussion about that. There was a presentation on emerging technology strategy. And so MPAC members were asked to give feedback on draft emerging technology principles, policies, and strategies, and those will be included in the regional transportation plan, which Metro is working on right now. And then finally, they gave an update on the latest regional leadership forum. This is the fourth and last in a series of meetings of leadership throughout the Portland area, including nonprofit groups, community advocates, elected officials, and staff. Let's see. Sorry. She also put it in small type. The outcome of the last forum recommended that equity, safety, travel options, climate start, and congestion mitigation be key points of review included in the regional transportation plan to select projects for funding. So that is it. And if you have any questions, I'll try to read fast.
Questions of Director Prosser on impact? No, thank you very much for the report. That's a good report. All right, well, that concludes our board reports. Why don't we move on to the General Manager's report? Mr. General Manager.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. President.
Report 1, right?
Report 1, yes. So have a number of reports here for you today, specifically covering off the February ridership. I'd like to give you a heads up on the Southwest Corridor project. I'll bring Steve Witter up for that. I'll give you an update on HOP, our typical quarterly performance report, and I'll also give you a short overview of the General Manager deliverables I have with an agreement with the board this morning, and also would like to introduce to you today our brand new Executive Director of Maintenance at the right time. So first, in terms of ridership, in February provided just over 7.4 million rides. That's down 1.7% compared to a year ago. And I should comment, I think I passed along a Washington Post article to most of the board members indicating that not only is TriMet down, but 31 of 35 properties in the United States are down. So this is something to watch for the industry, and I know we're all taking steps to how do we shore that up over time. And things like HB 2017 and other initiatives are really going to help in that regard.
Doug, really quick,
Sure.
So you said 31 of 35 properties
31
down
of
across the
35,
country.
correct.
Did they give an average of how far it's been down?
No, not in that article, but I do know the amount of ridership that we're down compared to many other properties a lot of them are in the 5 to 7%. Some are as high as 10 to 15% range. So our softening, if you will, is to be watched. I don't think when you get to that 10, 15%, I think it's more structural. There's a general banding here, but the article itself did not cover the specific averages, but have seen this from other reports, some general similarity. So,
all right, thank you.
Okay. The system-wide weekday off-peak performance, now these are nights and weekends, essentially flat, about 0.4% down. The weekly max ridership is down compared to last year, just off about 2.3%. And for the bus service, about 1.3%. The orange line continues to be the star as it continues to grow in new ridership for us, which is terrific. That translates into about 2.8% on weekday boardings compared to this time last year. So good performance continuing there. Just had under 8,000 weekly boardings. That's about 10% fewer trips were taken on West in February compared to previous year. Now, West has had more of a trending downwards. It's been larger in nature than the rest of the system. However, in February, this was particularly notable. We had a significant construction project going on where the ballast tracks and vegetation and a big works project, if you will, and in the railway language, they call it a work block. So that's had an impact on some of our service and reliability for the period, and you'll probably see Patrick Pricer talk to some of that in the quarterly performance coming up. We have seen an overall drop in West ridership, though, and largely this is due to employment changes in the corridor. We are taking steps on a number of fronts, our marketing outreach efforts. We know we've identified, for example, 31 employers along the West alignment with a total of 3,000 employees on our outreach list right now. We're actively going after those. We know there's a new pass program with PG&E, for example. There's an additional 300 employees that we'll be contacting that we think are potential targets to use the West service. We're also reaching out to major employers in the area with travel training mailers, Legacy Meridian, PCC Sylvania, and Providence St. Vincent. So you can start to see the efforts that are going on to try and shore up some of the West challenges here. And also there's 30 new multi-unit complexes that opened since West launched. So it's really trying to narrow in and target more of a targeted marketing campaign rather than just total mass mailers. Okay. That includes also new rider kits, extended social media, et cetera. So and lastly, in conjunction with all the outreach, we're doing a lot of that social media and targeted messaging. We hope and are optimistic this will help shore up some of the ridership challenge we have here. The next topic is, I'm just going to ask Mr. Steve Witter if he would come join me here to give us an update on the Southwest Corridor specifically. As we continue to advance our efforts in the Southwest Corridor, now this is a Metro-led project, but TriMet is deeply, deeply involved in the overall design and development of this project, and want to make you aware of some of the key decisions this board will need to make in the months ahead. So Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you to cover off the key materials.
Great. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Good morning, President Warner, members of the board. This is really a teaser for the Southwest Corridor. We know you had a busy agenda today, as we've seen with public testimony, and so we'd like to come back during the briefing session, hopefully next month, to give you a more in-depth presentation on Southwest Corridor. The reason I'd like to come before you today is we are at a point in the environmental review process where things are starting to get more public. We've been out with our Citizen Advisory Committee, staff at City of Tigard. We're giving presentations to their city council. So we wanted to give you just a brief update on where the project was. So as you engage with your colleagues around the region, that you're sort of up to date with them. What I have before you is the project schedule. 2018 to 2027, that's quite amount of time, so we're really in the very beginning stages of the project. As General Manager Kelsey noted, currently this environmental process is led by the Metro team. Just like we've seen in other projects, once we get a locally preferred alternative, that work effort will really shift to TriMet to finish up the environmental documentation in partnership with Metro. So right now in 2018, we have given our draft environmental impact statement to the regional FTA. Uh-oh. Did I do that?
Way to go, Director.
Is that the electrical guy? Well, we'll have to work on your certification.
You got to turn it back.
Sorry about that. So anyway, we're very early in the stages. The draft environmental impact statement has gone to the FTA regional offices up in Seattle, so they do a kind of a draft review. We've done a page turn with them, and that document will become public in just a quick amount of time. That'll be released to the public in May. We're hopeful maybe a little early in April, but that would give us the 45-day comment period. The graphics help tell the story.
Is the projector need to be rebooted?
Yeah, he just turned it back.
Maybe I'll just try to get through this.
Yeah,
So,
please.
So along with that draft environmental impact statement, the staff has recommended what is a new term for us, the initial route proposal. So in an effort to streamline the federal process, they've asked staff to essentially put out a draft preferred alternative. That enables the public to comment on a very kind of narrowed scope of the project and then allows the locally preferred alternative to move a little bit more quickly. In May and June, we're going to be back here to ask the Board of Directors to extend the design contracts so that we can, as we narrow down the LPA and move beyond that, we'll advance the design to 30%. That'll allow us to make application to the federal government. In July, the steering committee, which General Manager Kelsey sits on along with other regional partners, will choose a locally preferred alternative.
It's like you're back in the game, Steve.
I'm back in the game. So there are the dates that we talked about. We'll be back at TriMet to have the board adopt the locally preferred alternative. At that point, local jurisdictions often put conditions on the LPA. That'll be an opportunity for you to examine that as well. And then the locally preferred alternative process really wraps up in October with Metro Council adoption. I wanted to, again, touch on the initial route proposal. I mentioned FTA is requiring this as part of a streamlined project developed by staff, and it's been shared with the public. So Citizens Advisory Committee has seen it, Steering Committee has seen it, and as well as some of the jurisdictions. Really quickly, this is the initial route proposal. Of the many routes that we chose, this is referred to as the through route. It allows us to reach the heart of Tigard. Doesn't quite get into that historic downtown, but it's right there on the edge at Hall Boulevard. We use a railroad alignment, so we've been able to minimize some impacts to some pretty significant businesses there, and then eventually end at the Bridgeport Village. So just wanted to take a quick moment to brief you. I know there's a document in your packet that gives a little bit more detail, and then we'd look forward to coming back for a more detailed briefing and conversation with you hopefully next month. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I just want to say thank you for working with the property owners and businesses along Sequoia. They were very cordial and worked with us well, but I know it was a lot of effort to get to where you are. So.
Well, Leah Robbins and Dave Unsworth, who are leading our design effort, have done a great job to sort of tweak that route, and so it feels good. I think everybody's supportive.
Yeah. Thank you. I would just maybe add to this, Steve, to compliment the team, and just having worked in other properties before with large capital projects like this, that the team does a great job. They really are world class in how they approach things and the results they get. So just really well done to Steve and Leah and Dave. So thank you. Next part of the update is actually a HOP update. You have in your packages the latest update on our implementation of the HOP electronic fare system. We're moving forward now on the next milestone in this transition. We've begun testing to convert our ticket vending machines, we call them TVMs, from basically printing the paper to printing the HOP limited use tickets. The conversion itself will take place over the next several months. The key change to the TVMs is the simplification of the purchasing process for the visitors and infrequent users who use these ticket vending machines. With the simplifications, the customers, as a reminder, will be able to purchase 2.5-hour and day tickets at TVMs after the TVM's been converted. So there's a whole conversion process you will see unfold here in this network. The TVMs, though, will also no longer sell 7, 14, and 30-day passes. This is part of the overall transition of the whole program, and we eventually will phase those all out throughout the whole system overall. In terms of numbers, though, these passes, 7, 14, 30-day passes, they account for about 2% of all the ticket vending machine transactions. So it's something, every percentage counts, but it's not of a large enough percentage that it's going to distract us from our implementation overall program. But these adjustments, as just to remind the board, are part of a much larger plan that you approved as we developed HOP many months and literally years ago to simplify things in the transactions for our riders and improve the customer experience. So as an example, and I'll just give you a few that the board had made decisions on. You eliminated the zones, eliminated the free rail zone, you brought youth and honored citizens to the same price, you adopted fare capping, which is referenced earlier this morning. The same applies to the calendar month, in that once a person rides enough and has spent the equivalent of a month pass, the rest of the rides for that calendar month are free. You also embraced the efforts to grow the retail network, access points to getting access to the cards and thus our system. Currently, we're at 360 and growing, so we're well on our way now. As we looked at the simplification of our fare system and the elimination of the 7, 14, and 30-day passes, we conducted a Title VI analysis to look at potential impacts to the vulnerable communities. Even though we're not removing the passes system-wide at this time, we did proactively want to identify potential concerns that might be related to these ticket vending machines. So what we have found in this, and I'll bring up Carl Green, who's our Title VI and Equity Programs Administrator, to cover off some of the details now with you. So Carl, if you could join me, that'd be terrific. But the findings overall show no disparate income impact of removing the 7, 14, and 30-day passes from the TVMs or from TriMet as a whole. So maybe with that, Carl, I'll turn this short presentation over to you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Doug. President Warner, members of the board, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to present on the Title VI equity analysis for the proposed elimination of the 30-day pass to to set the stage for the proposed elimination of the 30-day pass proposal briefing. I wanted to make note of the e-fare migration Title VI analysis that was completed on January 6, 2016. Part of this technical analysis included the elimination of the 7 and 14-day pass options. And as a result of that analysis, there was no disparate impact or disproportionate burden on low-income populations or minorities. Providing this information is relevant since all multi-day pass options will be eventually phased out along with the 30-day pass, as Doug mentioned. And currently, multi-day passes are currently only sold at ticket vending machines and the mobile ticketing application. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide here that you have before you provides a visual depiction of the decision-making process as well as the actions taken when performing an equity analysis for either fare or major service changes. The FTA requires that all fare changes be evaluated for possible impacts on minority and low-income populations. If none are found, then no further action is required. However, if negative impacts are found for either minority or low-income populations, TriMet will evaluate alternatives or equitable alternatives that serve the same objective. And if there is no alternatives that will provide equitable measures, then TriMet will look to avoid, minimize, or mitigate the proposed action. So as far as the Title VI methodology, this proposal includes the eventual elimination of the 30-day pass, and an ordinance to do so will be brought forward to the board at a later date. The premise for conducting this analysis ahead of the ordinance reading is to identify any potential impacts that may be pertinent to a more immediate TVM transition strategy that is scheduled to start later this spring. One of the main questions that drove this research was, does eliminating the 30-day pass create any potential impacts? The data source that I utilized for this analysis was the 2016 TriMet Fare Survey. Before getting into testing disparate impacts, it is worthwhile to first define minority, which is all persons who identify as being part of any racial or ethnic group besides white, non-Hispanic. The disparate impact analysis examined whether trips by minority riders may bear a greater share of negative impacts or experience a lesser share of the positive impacts than trips by non-minority riders. This table here provides a comparison of minority status for the 30-day pass purchases by location, i.e. ticket vending machines and the mobile ticketing application. Column 1 denotes the number of non-minority fares purchased for TVMs and the mobile ticketing application, and column 2 represents minority fares purchased at the same channels of sales. To verbalize the findings, the purchase rates are similar for both groups. The results indicate that there is no disparate impact for the minority population, and the impacts are equally borne. Similar to the previous slide, it is also important to define low income with respect to Title VI. That is, individuals who are at or below 150% of the federal poverty level. The disproportionate burden analysis examines whether trips by low-income riders may bear a greater share of negative impacts or experience a lesser share of the positive impacts than trips by higher income populations or income riders. And as this table shows here, it's a comparison of income status for the 30-day pass purchases by location. And similar to the disparate impact, there are similar results, which indicates that both higher income and low income fares purchased are purchased at similar rates, thus no potential disproportionate burden are found, and the impacts are equally borne. All right, so the analysis conclusion states that given the available data, TriMet finds no disparate impact or disproportionate burden with this proposal. Going above and beyond the Title VI requirements, TriMet evaluated the fair sales reports to further assess any potential impacts with the pass elimination. Since the advent of HOP in July 2017, the overall demand for 30-day passes by TriMet's ridership have been extremely low. The minimal use of the 30-day pass is correlated with the positive attributes inherent in the HOP fare system. So 30-day passes account for less than 1% of all transactions from TVMs in the mobile ticketing app between July 18th, 2017 and December 31st of 2017. And as expected, the 30-day pass sales at TVMs have declined over 33% in just the first 6 months of HOP. So in that same time period, HOP sales have also increased substantially, and the number of active cards increased from 8,100 to over 54,000. This signifies not only the ridership's adoption of HOP, but the realized benefits of the system's pay-as-you-go and fare capping features. And I'll also add to that last bullet point, I received the KPI, or Key Performance Indicator, for the fare sales of February 2018, and the number of active cards are now at 81,000 active cards. All right, so mitigations and next steps. Although no adverse impacts were found, TriMet will implement several mitigations to minimize some of the potential impact. The first is a TVM transition outreach plan to keep riders well informed of the upcoming changes. The second is a TVM conversion strategy, which will preserve TVMs in higher and low-income areas until a latter part of the project. So as far as next steps goes, an ordinance will be brought forward to the board at a later date to phase out the 30-day pass and all multi-day options. So this analysis is being brought forward in order for the board to approve and consider the Title VI analysis. Any questions?
Questions by the board, comments by the board? Yes.
Thank you, Carl, for all that great information. Got a couple questions in regards to kind of not necessarily the analysis, I understand that perspective, but it's really, I mean, as we start projects like this, I mean, when it has intended and unintended consequences and impacts. You know, as we think about kind of the information that you just gave us, in contrast to, you know, these numbers don't necessarily highlight the adoption per se. by the different type of riders, the transit dependent, the low income, the minority. So we're looking at a pretty large swath of information and data that tells us, as you just said, I believe right now we're somewhere about 81,000
Yes.
active cards, which would represent roughly just less than a third of our daily ridership, if I'm not mistaken. Daily ridership is somewhere around 300,000 plus or minus 1,000 or 10,000 here or there, but it represents roughly about a third of our daily riders. Although, again, the whether or not it's got a disparate impact is really going to depend on how well the distribution of the cards are across all of our ridership. Is that a correct statement or an incorrect statement?
I would like to reach out to. Sorry about that. I can't necessarily answer that question, but I would defer to either Ryan Schaub.
Maybe I can jump in to help a bit here. So I think if the 81,000, that's card distribution, that's not necessarily daily use. So
correct.
So I think if we look at the 300,000 boardings a day, so we're taking a slow burn into this, and so you're quite right. We need to get a very wide distribution of this, not to just our existing ridership, but also future ridership as well. So this is part of our ongoing marketing efforts, and I think actually a best practices of implementation of complex software programs just like this. They're usually very challenging. So we have a lot of work to do to get, I'll call the wide net out beyond just existing ridership. It's going to take probably typically about a year plus, I think, to really get this full this full coverage out there for us. We think also one of the benefits are going to be having these extra retail outlets out there. So removing the barriers to access and entry is going to be one of the key tools for us. And then also having ability to get tickets through the airport and others for our tourists and others are going to be other new ways to manage this relationship. So we're not there yet. So I think the 81,000 to 300,000 I think is probably overstated in actual use. So I still believe we're at the very early stages of the implementation of this overall program. A lot more to do.
So, this is going to be more of a statement than it is a question. But ultimately, the analysis that whether or not we have a disparate impact, I think it's correct. I mean, I think we don't, from a perspective of taking all the information and saying whether or not in accordance with who and when 30-day passes and 14-day passes and 7-day passes were purchased, there's not a disparate impact. My concern, though, goes to ensuring that we stay on top of the ongoing analysis as we move forward as to the adoption of the HOP Pass throughout the various ridership buckets that we have to ensure that it isn't having a disparate impact based on whether or not some of our stakeholders who ride are not adopting the HOP Pass in the numbers that we see as far as the concept of the disparate analysis or impact. I will say, just recently I was talking with a colleague who had just gotten off the bus, and one of our bus operators was basically singing the praises of the fare capping. They were talking with a new passenger, just got on board, just boarded, and the bus operator was saying how amazing the fare capping is going to be as we go forward, and the passenger couldn't believe that we now have the option of fare capping. And I think fare capping is what allows us to move away from the 7, 14, and 30-day passes. I think it's a tremendous opportunity that we have to be able to roll out to our stakeholders, our riders. But I still have a concern in regards to making sure we stay on top of the analysis as we go forward in regards to whether or not the adoption is going to cause or the non-adoption is going to cause some type of disparate impact that we don't have our eye on.
Yeah, I might just add to that. I think that's great feedback for us, and I think let management take this back, and I think at some point we're going to need to do some benchmarking as to how this transition actually does materialize and bring that back to the board. Great comment.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, good comments. Other questions, comments? I guess I would just make one comment. You mentioned the outreach that you're going to do on the TVM and this transition. I think one of the things we heard pretty loudly and clearly as we were going through the selection process for the general manager is that we need to do a better job of engaging minority and low-income communities on this. So I just want to make sure you're making a special effort out there, because we do want to see the adoption rates by those individuals and those groups to be consistent with the rest of the population here of our ridership. So just nod your head that that's what you're doing, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, good. All right.
Very good.
Thank you.
Carl,
Thanks,
thank you
Carl.
very much. Just continuing on with the General Manager's report, I'd like to call up Patrick Price, our Executive Director of Transportation, to cover off the quarterly performance reports for you. Overall, we do definitely continue to see progress in the overall performance of the organization. There's a tremendous amount of work that's going on throughout this organization on many, many fronts to help contribute to some of these results. So if I can, Patrick, just turn it over to you first.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, Board President, Board members. Again, Patrick Pricer, Executive Director of Transportation. In your packets, you should have a fourth quarter report, and I'm just going to walk through those and certainly welcome any questions that you may have. So just getting started here on the vehicle and system reliability section. Across the board, we saw preventative maintenance targets that exceeded the FTA requirements. We did see a slight decline in year-over-year performance. Some of that could be attributed to staffing, weather, and focus on heavy repairs. I would like to point out that for the preventive maintenance on the fare equipment, there's been 8 straight quarters of 100% performance, so that's just phenomenal. Moving on to mean distance between failures, which is another, I'm very excited to speak to this this morning. The teams in maintenance have just been so focused, and we can clearly see that in the results. On the rail side, when we look to the previous year, mean distance between failure is actually up 22.9%. On our Type 2 vehicles, we are exceeding 50,000 miles. And on the Type 5 vehicles, we are exceeding 48,000 miles, which is a huge accomplishment by the team. On the bus side, we're seeing similar results. We're up 27.7% compared to the previous year, and they're getting over 14,000 miles. Moving on to service delivery, when we look at the previous quarters, I'm going to speak to on-time performance, which is a really good story as well. On the bus side, we're up 5.3%. On the rail side, we're up 4%, which puts us just under 87%. And when you just kind of look at that trend and the trajectory, it's just everybody's very, very excited about that. And on the west side, our OTP is up 3.1%, sitting at 96%. And again, a lot of this is attributed to the collaborative efforts across functions and across divisions and departments on the continuous improvement teams. So, the teams will continue that good work. When we get into ridership, I won't spend too much time on that. I know Mr. Kelsey has already provided some background. But when we look at the previous year, rides per revenue hour were down 3%. On the bus side, we were down 2.3%. Max was down 3%. So total boardings in general were down 1.5% compared to the previous year. Some of that can be attributed to the increase in service hours. We boosted service hours about 1,350 hours weekly. And West was down 4.3%. And Mr. Kelsey talked a little bit about the employment challenges and opportunities in that area. Moving on to operator support. Starting this month, we will begin reporting out on mayor strikes, even though that is considered minor. The actual quantity of mayor strikes is quite high because they account for about 40% of our collisions. The good news is we have seen a decline of mayor strikes amounting to about 9%, and there are specific focus efforts underway to continue to drive that number down. Safety's taken the lead on that. When we look at collisions specifically for bus compared to the previous year, those are down 13.8%, mainly around fixed objects and cars. The collisions with bike and pedestrians is relatively flat. We did see an increase in the other category. It jumped from 7 to 14. These are random things like highway, rail, grade crossing, equipment, shopping carts, things in the right-of-way. Looking at the collisions for Max, they were down as well, 6%. And with vehicles down 11.7%. So of course everyone is very pleased about that. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk about complaints and commendations. For the bus side, our complaints were down 11.7% compared to our previous year, and Max complaints were down 40%. And I think we can attribute a lot of that to the on-time performance information that I was talking about earlier, the mean distance between failures, and the fact that we did have a favorable winter weather season, all things considered. We did see a slight uptick on safety complaints. Most of these complaints are geared towards other riders as opposed to equipment or some type of safety issue in that area. Bus commendations were down, and Max commendations were down. Again, when we do not have inclement weather, we tend to see a drop in commendations as well. But that's not the whole story, because when I finish up with this report, I'm going to take an opportunity to talk about a couple of commendations in particular that I think everybody would be very interested in hearing. And the last section that I'm reporting on is the Max rule violations, which have been down 19% compared to the past year. We did see a slight uptick in this last fourth quarter. There's not one single reason for that. I can assure you that the team is really working hard to continue to reduce human factor errors and improve in this area. But we tend to see some trends when we do have what we call a new sign-up, or we bring a number of operators who have spent some time away from rail and bus and then bring them back to rail. So part of that can be attributed to that. Just at a very high level, some good work that's going on has to do with increasing our practical training, also the remedial training, implementing some wayside signage, and then working with our supervisors to essentially go out in coaching teams to support the operators and the service. So before I move on to talk about commendation in particular, are there any questions about any of the information that I just covered?
Please. I do have a question. Now that you're reporting mirror strikes, what are mirror strikes?
So a mirror strike is for bus, and that is, it could happen in a couple of different ways, but either someone strikes the mirror of the bus, or we come in contact with something that strikes the mirror. So it could happen in either way. So the safety team is leading the effort to look at the different types of mirrors we have on the vehicles. In some cases, the size of our streets have narrowed, and to some extent, depending on the type of mirror and the type of bus, that width may have increased slightly. So taking a similar safety-focused, continuous improvement team approach to saying, doing some benchmarking and saying, okay, how can we shrink this footprint so that we can have fewer mirror strikes? And that will, not only improve safety, but it will also improve our service, because depending on the extent of the damage to the mirror, the bus may or may not be able to continue in service.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add, just an example of those could be a tree branch, could be a sign that's been bent hanging over the road, a number of things that could cause it, or another vehicle that just literally gets too close out of its lane and clips the mirror of the bus.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'm very excited to introduce a number of folks and staff. The first person I'd like to introduce and ask him to just sit next to me is one of our bus operators, Glenn Spice. I'd like to bring him up today to thank him for his empathy, compassion, and just commitment to excellence. He's just, it's just a great story about a selfless act that was noticed by our customers, but certainly not anything new. This is just, how Glenn takes care of business and takes care of our customers. So I'm going to just read briefly a few of those commendations, but I also want to bring up Lyle Pereira, who is our manager at our Center Street facility, and Leonard Lambert, who's our assistant manager at our Center Street facility, and Mary Hill, who leads our service improvement process. And the team collectively works to make sure that the information from our riders is used to help improve the customer service. And this group here is just committed to insisting on success. So, what Glenn did in his daily duties, he wasn't looking for any kind of commendation or special thanks. He just saw someone in need and essentially paid their fare, and also, gave away and shared his lunch with that individual who was clearly in need. And fortunately, we had some commendations come in, and I'm just going to briefly read those. It was such a wonderful act of kindness and generosity on the part of the bus driver. In the cold and snowy morning, he offered a wonderful gift to another human who was obviously more affected by our current inclement weather. What a wonderful human and driver. The next one, it was so endearing to see a bus driver hold so much compassion for a man in need. Your drivers are kind and caring to the Portland community, but this driver went above and beyond today. It's great to see TriMet employees show kindness and regularly show selfless acts. And we heard some statements earlier and testimony about TriMet's vision and TriMet's mission and the values. And I'm pleased to sit before you today and thank Glenn for really doing the right thing and living those values, and not just here at TriMet, also outside of work. I think he's going to share some information that is very powerful and everyone would be interested to hear. So with that said, I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate everything that you do.
Appreciate it, Patrick. First off, I just want to say I'm just absolutely humbled and quite honestly a little bit embarrassed right now to be here. This is actually something I'm very passionate about. I actually, a couple years ago, I'm a founding member of Columbia Grove and help operate our homeless program. And what we do is we collect donations and we go out and we distribute, be it socks, hygiene products, whatever it is people need out in the city to just help make their lives a little bit better, a little more comfortable. And one thing I found as a bus operator is, unlike most other jobs, positions, I don't get a choice of who I get to come in contact with. And I have found that I am placed right in the heart of some of our community's people who are the most in need. And I've taken that opportunity to carry extra supplies with me, extra things, and help people in any way that I can. Quite honestly, there was a veteran who had just gotten housing. She had no furniture. The next day, I found someone who could deliver a bed to her house. There was a woman I found who was in a shopping cart, and it was freezing cold. She just had wearing nothing but pajamas, no socks, no shoes. I gave her my socks because not for any reason other than it's the right thing to do. And I've been put in a position to be able to do these things. With the nonprofit that I help run, one of the things that I've been talking about doing is seeing if I can get other bus operators on board. And whether it be bus operators or, as we've heard talked about today, the rider advocacy. For me, it doesn't matter who does these things, but if we have people who have some of these supplies, some of these things where when we do see somebody in need, just helping them in any way that we can. And one thing that I personally would like to see is, to be able to sit down with the right people within TriMet, within the union, to try to have that much more of an impact in our community. And it's mind-blowing to me that, I have this opportunity to sit here in front of all of you and be able to advocate for the people who are most in need in our community.
Well, thank you very much again, Glenn. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you all. Great. Yeah.
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
Yes, it is.
And humbling. Thank you so much. And thanks, Patrick, for sharing this and these examples of what TriMet is and what this great community really is. And boy, we have lots of work to do to take advantage of your talent. So thank you so much. It is truly hard to transition and follow after that. That's pretty powerful. I have a couple other things. I'll keep it brief just for sake of time. It was just to talk about part of my deliverables and the status of that, as I said I would report to the board on. As part of my contract with you, I was really committed to delivering more effective communication and coordination within the community and our employees, and over the next number of months and going forward. So just to give you a quick update, the budget workshops, the town hall listening sessions, a lot of work is underway, finding the dates, locations, and we're actually developing the program right now. So over the next couple weeks, we'll have information out to you on the details of those budget and public town hall meetings. For the expansion of the TIAC, or the Expanded Transit Equity Advisory Committee, we have, and as Dr. Bethel had reported, we have identified a list of potential participants and reviewing that, and hope to have that out here, making contacts and outreach with people over the next week to really get moving on that as well. As also had referenced, specifically under the Safety and Security Committee, and so you saw the rider advocacy side of the conversation today, which is terrific. That will be a really important piece for me under TIAC. So Director Simmons has agreed to participate on that as one of the active board members. And so that list is being compiled and finalized here, hopefully by the end of this week, and we'll get moving on that one as well. We have spoken to a couple, one contractor specifically around the whole equity analysis and review that we're going to do. There's a second outside consultant we're spending some time trying to reach out to. We're very comfortable that work will be done well within timeline as well. The Portland State University update of that work that was done previously, that is underway and will be well ahead of timeline on that one also. And the hot paper ticket transition, that was part of one of the other commitments. It's probably the furthest along. And our marketing outreach efforts, they're already ramping up right now, and I won't go into that because I think some of that was covered off earlier as well. And finally, the employee town halls, where I had committed to doing 5. I actually believe we need to do more, and am doing more, so I've already done 6, where 5 were previously identified, and in fact, probably over the next 3 weeks or so, we'll have completed 12. So I think this is a really important piece of outreach, and I'll bring this back to you once I've completed that, the internal town halls, and specifically with what I believe are some of the themes and actions that will come from that. So unless there's any questions on that specific piece, I'll move to the final part of the GM report, and that is really to welcome and introduce to you today my first executive hire since being the general manager, and that's Mr. Roland Hoskins. So if we just ask if you would stand, I think he's here in the audience. There he is. Roland is just a terrific hire. We're so pleased to have him here. He'll be joining us starting April the 9th. However, he's already been doing outreach and meeting with some of the staff already, so he's an eager kind of guy, which is outstanding. So he has a great track record, both in the public and private sector. He brings more than 30 years of expertise in business management, labor relations, human resources, and also organizational development. He'll be overseeing a really capable team of directors and managers in the maintenance side of things, so he will be our new executive director of maintenance. He comes to us from just down the road in Eugene as the assistant general manager there at Lane Transit. So again, not to tie up time, so I do encourage you after the end of the meeting, please come up and introduce yourself to Roland. And unless you
We're
want to
waving him up here.
oh, come on up. Okay, let's do it now. Come on. I know you weren't, but you're a flexible guy.
Nice try, though.
Nice try. So welcome to Roland Hoskins.
Thank you all, Chair Warner and the rest of the board, and of course Mr. Kelsey and my new team mates. So really looking forward to everything. Wasn't prepared to come up here and talk today, but in general, I think that I'm really just kind of inspired, actually, about just the service, the level of commitment to service, and serving. I really look forward to serving you all and my team, and just contributing in any way that I can. And gosh, I'm a little nervous, but just really thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to getting started and working with everybody that I get a chance to work with, collaborate with, whether it's people within my teams, the community members that I might be engaged with, other community partners and agency partners that I look forward to serving and working with as well. And in general, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Could I
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
have a synopsis of your background?
Oh, it's a very
Born, raised, just quickly.
just a very varied background from both public and private organizations that I've worked for, larger and smaller. I've had a couple of international businesses myself, and so it's just a nice blend, I think, of meeting the balance between the public side of serving. That's where my heart is. And then also just cutting my teeth on the private side and understanding the different types of approaches to the business and
All right.
how things work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
We'll
thank
get
you.
more later from you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
Forward to working
you.
with you. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much for coming up. Appreciate it. We will
thanks.
come say hello.
All
You're
right.
still around. Sure.
Thank you, Roland. And sorry, I know you weren't expecting to come up, but thank you. You did great.
It's part of the test.
It's part of the test, yes. So anyway, Mr. President, that concludes my report. And if you had any questions, happy to answer.
All right. Any other questions or comments by the board for the general manager? Well, seeing none, before we move then right on the consent agenda, I am going to use my prerogative to ask that the board consider a non-agenda item, which is a resolution that has been drafted to recognize one of our transit riders who has a history with TriMet for a number of years, and that's Neil McFarland, who I see in the audience. I think you all know that we had an opportunity to acknowledge his efforts for TriMet and to abuse him a little bit at a retirement party a couple of weeks ago. But the staff took the time to put together a resolution honoring Neil McFarland. There's no number. But as you can see, it's a lot of whereas, because it really talks about his work with the agency and what he's been able to accomplish during his tenure as the general manager specifically, but also in other positions in the agency. And what it really says is, now therefore be it resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors, its president, and its staff express a sincere gratitude to Mr. McFarland for his years of dedicated service. And then it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Mr. McFarland as an expression of our respect and appreciation. And I've signed this. So with that, I'd like to ask for a motion by the board.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Is there any comments by the board on this one? All right, then maybe I could ask Mr. McFarland to come up, and I want to present this to him. This is a little different perspective.
A little more relaxed.
So you can tell us where your first trip is, by the way.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Make you all jealous, but thank you all very much
much. Sure, thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank
If I
you.
could just take maybe one moment.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. Never met a Mike he didn't like, I guess.
I'm out of practice, though.
Well,
but I
yeah,
promise
right.
it'll be less than 3 minutes. But I do want to particularly thank you for this honor of this resolution. I would say that one of the best things about my tenure, 27 years at TriMet, was my interaction with you as the TriMet board and, of course, your predecessors as well. You have brought wisdom and guidance and some pretty sharp and important questions that you have heard from the community and have come up with yourselves. So thank you very much. And that makes this all that more meaningful. Second, you've heard so many things today about the great work of TriMet employees. And while I haven't quite read this, I suspect there are some accomplishments that are noted there. And again, nothing would have been possible without the great work of what is now nearly 3,000 TriMet employees on a daily basis doing incredible work. And just as I come back to this agenda and this meeting, the breadth of topics that you cover and that TriMet is involved with is really breathtaking. And I'm going to try to relax a little bit moving on from all of that. My final note is congratulations to Mr. Kelsey and to you for, I think, a very stellar hire. I've joked with Doug that this was hopefully going to be a general manager upgrade. That's my hope and that's my expectation as we move forward, because that's the way of TriMet, is up and better at in all areas. So again, thank you very much for the honor and the opportunity to spend less than 3 minutes talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy Machu Picchu, right? Yeah, sorry.
Wow.
All right. Let's move on then to the consent agenda. And items appearing on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. However, any member of the board may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion or questions by requesting such action prior to consideration of this portion of the agenda. I will note there are 4 items on the consent agenda item today. The approval of the minutes of the February 28th, 2017, excuse me, must be the 2018 meeting, right? And a resolution directing that all reading of all ordinances be done by title only. A third is a resolution authorizing a contract with Columbia Pressure Washing LLC for bus shelter cleaning in the southeast area. And then finally, a resolution authorizing a contract with the International City Management Association Corporation, ICMA-RC, for third-party administration of our TriMet's 401A defined contribution retirement plan and a 457B deferred compensation plan. So with that, is there any items on the consent agenda that any member of the board would like to have removed for questions or consideration?
I have a question.
Okay.
Just on the record keeping. Would they have an office here in Portland? ICMA?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
they at least have a local representative that services
Yeah,
this area.
Just from my experience with pensions, it's always good to.
Yeah, and
Not
she's
go on to voice
she
recording.
visits TriMet regularly.
Good, okay.
Any other questions or pulling agenda? Well, seeing none then, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. With that, let's go on to the resolutions. The first resolution is Resolution 18-03-27, which is approving the proposed fiscal year 2019 annual budget for submission to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This resolution does request, as you've indicated, that the board approve the proposed 2019 fiscal year budget for submission to Multnomah County's Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, also known as TSCC. This is just the first step in the budget process. Today's action is required under Oregon budget law, where you approve the proposed budget and then send it to TSCC. After reviewing the budget, TSCC will hold a public hearing before returning it to the board for adoption at your upcoming May 23rd board meeting. The FY19 proposed budget totals $1.3 billion, including $710 million for operations and $274 million for general fund and operating projects, with remaining funds for pass-through, contingency, and ending fund balances. It's also focused on implementing the requirements for HB 2017. That also includes a 4.7% increase in bus service hours, which is significant, and other service improvements, as well as the implementation of the really important low-income fare program. The budget also addresses essential capital maintenance and replacements, including the replacement of aging buses and the addition of new buses to meet service expansion needs, as well as the necessary repairs and refurbishments of our customer and operating facilities. Clearly a tremendous amount to do, but it's also tremendously exciting. It is consistent with pension policies adopted by the board in February of 2014. This budget also meets the board's strategic financial plan policies in the areas of fund balance, debt service, and service growth. It is also based on some major revenue assumptions, including a strong payroll tax growth, as well as continued support from a variety of federal sources. It does not include for this fiscal year to include a fare increase. The FY19 proposed budget, we believe, is balanced and complies with Oregon budget law, and that TriMet is committed to staying on course to achieve the fiscal stable future that's been able to achieve, and we need to keep up with our commitments to our employees, retirees, riders, and payroll taxpayers. Mr. President, that will conclude my comments.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the General Manager? Seeing none, I guess I would just make the comment that good piece of work, and I know that you've done a lot of outreach already to get input on the budget, but as you pointed out, this is not a done deal yet. We still have to go forward through processes, and we have some time before we adopt the budget. So we're still open for people making suggestions and input and providing testimony on our budget from this time on. But this does get us into the formal process with the TSCC, as you point out.
Yeah, correct.
All right, good, thank you. Well, with that then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 18-03-27?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-27, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. The next item is Resolution 18-03-28, which is authorizing the purchase of real property located at 3225 Southwest Barber Boulevard in Portland. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members of the board, I would like to call up Lance Ertz. I think he's here as well, in case you have supplemental questions on this recommendation. This resolution requests that the board authorize the acquisition of property on the Southwest Corridor project located at 3225 Southwest Barber Boulevard in Portland. The property is located directly below OHSU, the part at the top of the hill. It's necessary for construction of a pedestrian access between Barber and OHSU for the Southwest Corridor project. Now, a little bit of background on this property. It's owned by a small Sephardic Jewish congregation and is home to their synagogue. Interestingly, the congregation moved to this location in the 1960s after the city of Portland acquired its previous location through the process of eminent domain. In the nearly 60 years since, much of the congregation has moved out of the area, and that's a problem because members are not supposed to be driving on the Sabbath.
Supposed to be able to walk
Correct.
close to this.
Correct.
Yes.
The congregation has been planning to move but needs to sell its current site first. However, the future of the site as part of the Southwest Corridor would significantly and negatively impact the sale. The congregation has asked TriMet to purchase the property as a hardship acquisition, which is approved by the Federal Transit Administration. We agreed to a purchase price of $1.66 million, which is included in your FY 2018 project budget. We will also provide relocation benefits, which is required by the FTA. Following the sale, TriMet will lease the property back to the congregation until their new facility is built or until it is needed for the Southwest Corridor project, whichever comes first. The Southwest Corridor is currently at a 5 to 10% design stage. The construction expected to begin in 2021. Lance, unless you had any other comments, I'd turn it back to the board if should you have any questions.
Okay. Questions, comments by the board?
I have a comment. A friend of mine was involved helping out the community, the members at the synagogue. More than once he said how much he liked working with the staff here. So I'm going to pass that on.
Great.
There are actually a couple of representatives here today, Renee Ferreira and Ron Sidis, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, yes, thanks. Went well.
Yeah, it seems like a very straightforward and beneficial solution for everybody.
Correct.
To help them out, so I commend the staff for working with them to come up with this solution.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good piece of work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve Resolution 18-0328? I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-28, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations to all of you on this one.
Thank you.
Good piece of work.
Thanks, Lance.
All right. Let's move on to the third resolution, which is Resolution 18-03-29, which is authorizing a contract with Shetke Northwest Sales, Inc. for purchase of replacement and expansion vehicles for the provision of lift services. Very important.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This resolution requests that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Shetke Northwest Sales Incorporated for the purchase of replacement and expansion vehicles for the lift paratransit service. We believe this is a really good story where we're not only making ourselves more efficient, but we're also improving the overall customer experience for our riders. The current fleet consists of 253 lift-equipped minibuses and 15 ramp-equipped vans. Our goal is to replace these vehicles at 8 years, or about 230,000 miles, which is part of the industry standard in terms of frequency. We are in the process of switching from the much larger custom type of vehicle to this Ford Transit passenger wagon. The vans get far better fuel economy. We also believe it improves our yield, our effectiveness of how many passengers we're carrying. So the cost side, the effectiveness side, the overall customer experience is better. They're about $30,000 less than the larger vehicle that they replace on the cost side of things. They're also cheaper to maintain beyond just the purchase price. And it's also easier for our mechanics to work with in terms of productivity. They have a tighter suspension and also, I believe, a smoother ride for our customers. I did receive one comment from Chris Walker this morning that I've asked Margot and Patrick Pricer to follow up on. I would like to understand that better, but overall, we do believe the customer experience is a better one for our riders, so we will follow up on that. The procurement before you today, though, is for 124 new lift vehicles over a 3-year period. Comprised of 109 vehicles would be part of the replacement, and 15 would be for expansion. You even heard comments on expansion this morning. Now, TriMet used the State of Oregon Department of Transportation's Public Transit Division price agreement for the procurement. That's quite a mouthful, which results in better pricing. So we have better buying power than we do, in essence. The proposed contract with Shetke Northwest Sales amounts to $9,072,000, and if approved, we'll be awarded the contract. They were the only responsive firm that could provide the vehicles that met TriMet standards. The execution is contingent upon a successful pre-award Buy America audit that's required to ensure our compliance to the FTA Buy America provisions. And I suspect on these vehicles we'll most likely get about 200,000 miles or about 6 years out of them for this new vehicle type. In the end, we believe it's a good investment. It's cost-effective in its life cycle approach and believes enhances the customer experience. With that, this is recommended to you at the board.
Questions for the general manager or staff? Yes.
It's not a question as much as a comment. I'm glad you acknowledged the email from Chris Walker. we received it also, and it looked to me like his concerns were well-founded. So I'd just like to encourage you to look at that closely and see if we can address some of those concerns.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, the management team's already on it this morning, so yeah, I think they have some good comments.
Other questions, comments? Board ready then to offer a motion to approve Resolution 18-03-29?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-29, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. We have Resolution 18-03-30, which is looking at a contract with CH2M.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This project provides design services for an accessible pedestrian and cyclist overcrossing over the UP or Union Pacific Railroad and the Max Orange Line tracks between Southeast 14th and Southeast 13th place in Portland. It restores an important connection for us that was eliminated due to the addition of the Orange Line tracks at the time of its construction. The overcrossing was originally part of the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project, but was deferred when federal funding came in below expectations. TriMet successfully secured approval from the FDA to move ahead with the construction using the remaining Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project funds, with strong support for the Hosford-Abernathy neighborhood, as well as the City of Portland. It's important to note here, the City of Portland, not TriMet, will be the ultimate owner, operator, and maintainer of this project. TriMet engaged in outreach to disenfranchise business enterprise vendors prior to issuing a request for proposals for this project. The RFP was subject to the Brooks Act, also known as the qualifications-based selection process. This method requires the agency to select the most qualified firm and then negotiate a fair and reasonable price. In this case, CH2M was selected based on the analysis of the Proposal Evaluation Committee. In the proposal, CH2M indicated it would utilize DBE contractors for approximately 44% of the work in the areas of architectural design, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, landscape architecture, and electrical engineering. This resolution authorized the award of a contract in an amount not to exceed $972,670. The project, I should comment, is also included in the FY18, FY19 capital program. Mr. President, this is recommended for the board's consideration.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments on this resolution?
Yeah. Doug, you have a ballpark figure how much the whole thing was going to cost when it's done?
Steve, maybe I'll call up Steve Witter just to
quickly, Steve.
On this one.
4 or 5?
Oh, no.
3?
The construction itself is probably a $7 million
Okay.
project. It has elevators on each side,
Yeah.
and so that really drives the cost. And again, as the general manager mentioned, this is really a tremendous opportunity to bring back that pedestrian connection and safely across the heavy rail tracks.
Okay. 7-8 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you.
That area. Yeah. Good. Thanks.
All right. No other questions? All right, then. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 18-03?
I'll second it.
Here, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those then in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-30, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Let's move on then to Resolution 18-03-31, which is authorizing a contract with Stacy Whitbeck.
Great. Okay, thank you, Rich. This project would allow TriMet to make improvements that would improve the reliability of the steel bridge, as well as handle more speed and reliability of light rail vehicles that use the bridge in particular. This is not the replacement of the bridge. This is how do you keep it in a state of reasonable repair for the next number of years. In addition to these improvements, it would allow for necessary track rehabilitation work at multiple locations throughout this system. The board authorized a contract with Stacy Whitbeck for pre-construction service at its May 2017 meeting. The services are now complete, and TriMet is prepared to modify the contract to now add the construction services part of this. Stacy and Wickbeck has performed very well thus far. There have been no safety incidents or disputes. There are also a total of 10 construction projects for this project overall. The resolution would authorize Stacy and Wickbeck to perform all of this work. However, TriMet will conduct negotiations for each specific package in accordance with CMGC practices separately. TriMet will execute the contract modifications with Stacy and Wickbeck for the agreed upon amount for each package. If we're unable to reach an agreement for each package, TriMet will issue an invitation to bid for that work and request board approval as required for each one. In its original proposal, Stacy and Wickbeck stated it expected to obtain minority, women, and emerging small business SDBVE participation of approximately 18% through subcontracting opportunities, including permit coordination, site security, construction survey, metal fabrication, and the train signal modifications. For this package 1, the company is expecting to achieve 17.2% utilization. TriMet will also work with Stacy and Wickbeck to maximize the MWESB SDBVE participation when negotiating subsequent packages. Now that's a lot of alphabet words, but we're planning on a going forward basis. We'd probably use the state of Oregon acronyms and approach going forward. That stands for Small Veteran Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. This is the language, though, that is in non-federally funded projects instead of DBE. That would conclude the recommendation in front of you today. I might call up Steve as well if you're able to talk to any questions you might have. Yes.
I noticed that there are actually 2 projects that deal with the steel bridge. So first question is, how long will the steel bridge be under construction or modification? Second question is, how will we and the traffic, so for the rail and both an automobile, will that be disrupted, and if so, for how long, and what are the alternatives?
Sure. Board President, Member Prosser, the work on Steel Bridge, yes, there are several packages listed. This is really an incremental approach to solving several problems on the Steel Bridge. General Manager Kelsey mentioned signal reliability. There are switches embedded in the pavement now. As rainwater and debris come off of those, off of the streets, they run down the track, they run into the switches. So our proposal here is to remove that pavement around the switches so they can be easily cleaned and maintained. There will be, perimeter curbing around there so it's not a safety issue with traffic. And we can do all that work without disruption to the rail service this time. That's going to run from April 2nd until June 1st, and the work will all be done at night. So we won't have any rail or traffic disruptions. Okay. The other part of this resolution, however, is Providence Park. There is a switch at Providence Park that is due for replacement. That will incur a 5-day bus bridge. And so I know that you are well aware that we've done several of these rail replacements. Stacy Wickbeck has been the contract and therefore was most qualified for this project as well. So we'll work with our own internal teams. I think it is disruptive, but we have a pretty good track record with customer service, putting our customer service forces, including myself, I've been out there to volunteer, to help patrons manage the bus bridge. But as I said, that would just be 5-day interruption, and that would happen sort of the first week of May.
Okay. And the dealing with the lift spans, will that be?
So that will come, that is a yet to be negotiated portion. Right. That will certainly come with some disruption of the rail service across the bridge, so we'll put into our bus bridge system. Okay. We'll also look for opportunities to fix other things on the system while we've got it closed down. We've been pretty successful at being able to do that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Good, you're welcome.
Good.
Would you let the contractor know if he finds a set of pliers on the east tower, they're mine?
Are they got a blue handle or a red handle?
Blue.
Okay.
They've been there since 1990 when I worked up there, so.
I wonder if that's part of our signaling.
No, no.
That's the problem.
Glitch.
You were doing so well, Steve. Thanks. Anyway, I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Esmond.
Other questions, comments? Again, I would just say that this is a good example of why we utilize the construction manager, general contractor process, where you've got this kind of, project where you've got traffic, pedestrians, lift spans, old electrical, new electrical. I mean, I can't, there's just so many things that we count on this general manager, general contractor to deal with on this kind of thing. And doing a design bid build would just not work in this kind of situation. So with that, is there a motion to approve
So moved.
Resolution 18-03-31?
So moved.
Have a motion? Is there a second? Did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
We have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none. All those in favor then of the resolution 18, or the motion to approve resolution 18-03-31, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion is approved unanimously. The last resolution is Resolution 18-03-32, which is looking to add some additional members to our House Bill 2017 committee meeting, or committee group.
Thank you. So this was a recent add because the rules, in fact, have recently been updated here for HB 27, and the regulations particularly focus on the outside of the TriMet boundary, but within the overall TriMet County region. So what you have before you is a recommendation to help maintain the balance of not just adding one person within the tri-county approach. You have the names before you here today. So we believe this is an unbalanced approach, and that's the recommendation in front of you today.
Good. Some good members that you've got proposed. Any comments,
No.
questions? All right, then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 18-03-32?
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Have a second? I think that was Travis. So,
I'll take
Yes,
it.
okay,
Travis.
he'll take it. Any further discussion? All right, then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 18-03-32, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, so let's move on then to the final item on our business agenda, which is, okay, we can do that. Would you like a 5-minute break now?
If everybody else is.
Or do you want to dispose of this one first? Why don't we get, unless we got some questions, that, of course, will take time, I apologize. But the ordinance here is an ordinance to actually implement the service changes that we've been talking about for the last few months, and you heard a lot about. So, again, I'm feeling bad. I think we need to take 5 minutes now, and let's let people take a 5-minute break. Then we can get this item and the one briefing item done without taking a break, okay? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize. I looked at the face there.
Yeah.
So, 10 minutes? Is that enough? All right, are we ready to start again? All right.
Last but not least.
So we're now turned to the ordinance on service changes, and I'm going to turn and ask TriMet General Counsel Shelley Devine for the first reading of this ordinance. Ms. Devine?
Thank you, Mr. Board. Thank you, Mr. Board President. Ordinance 350 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, adopting service changes, updating route designations, and amending TriMet Code, Chapter 22. This is the first reading.
Thank you. So at our February briefing, Carrie Ayers Palanik, do I pronounce? Palanik, thank you very much. Director of Policy and Planning presented the proposed 2019 service changes in detail and answered a lot of questions. And after that, we had, again, further discussion and got it scheduled for this date. And what we'd like to do is ask the General Manager to first introduce this ordinance. We'll then hear from Carl Green about the Title VI and Equity Program that was resulted in the analysis you heard earlier today. And then we can open a public hearing and then hopefully move forward to the second reading and maybe possible action at our next regular business meeting. So with that, Mr. General Manager.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the board. As you've indicated, this Ordinance 350 adopts the important service changes and updates for route designations for the fiscal year 2019. You have already received a full briefing on all of these changes at your last board meeting, but I wanted to touch on a few of the really important highlights. Firstly, this September, we're going to split Line 4, Division and Fessenden, into 2 lines. Line 2, Division and Line 4, Fessenden, to improve reliability by reducing opportunities for delays due to the congestion issues, in fact, that some of the other folks spoke about earlier today. We'll also introduce 24-hour service, as we heard from the COO at Portland Port Authority, and their appreciation for this, to Line 20 at Burnside Stark to help late night and early morning workers get to and from work. We will also increase Line 73 at 122nd Avenue. We will add service and earlier and later trips to 4 lines that serve the Markham Hill to better meet the needs of the OHUS employees and their shift times. We will also add weekday midday service to Line 96 to Wallet and I-5. And we'll also be expanding service on one of the improvements we just made in March to the Line 81. Again, you heard about that this morning as well, which was extended to the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park area. We plan to add a new bus line that will bridge the gap in the Max Red Line service to PDX. Then in March of next year, we'll expand service even more. We'll extend Line 24 across the Fremont Bridge and through Northwest Portland to Goose Hollow Max Station. This improvement's intended to help people from the Northeast Portland access jobs on the west side faster. The changes to Line 79, which serves Clackamas and Oregon City, will provide more direct route and serve a new area fundamentally. We'll also add a new line, Line 31 in Webster, that will serve Webster Road in the Milwaukee area and parts of Gladstone formerly served by Line 79. The proposed service change is the result of numerous conversations and many meetings, as well as outreach with our jurisdictional partners, the businesses, riders, and community stakeholders, some of which you actually heard from today. The proposed service improvements were reviewed by various committees, including TIAC and the HB 2017 committee. We also took public comment by phone, emailed, and of course standard mail. A Title VI analysis was performed and no significant concerns were identified. The proposed service changes improve service significantly for minority and low-income populations. I also like to ask Carl Green with our Department of Diversity and Transit Equity just to go over the summary report if you could at this time.
Thank you.
Hello again.
Yes, hello again.
Mr. Board President, fellow directors. So again, this Title VI analysis will serve to evaluate service equity, which is one of the 5 priority considerations utilized by the service planning decision-making process. So the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 states, no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from the participation in, be denied in the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. The FTA Title VI circular requires TriMet to prepare and submit an equity analysis prior to implementing any service changes. So this is an overview of the equity analysis. decision-making process. Similar to the previous slide that I mentioned during the 30-day pass elimination, what differs from this Title VI analysis is the major service change for the FY19 service proposal. So I'll spend a little bit of time defining what constitutes a major service change, which is a newly established line, a line being split into two or more routes, and as well as a 15% change in either span, frequency, or hours. And I would like to add that this 15% threshold is significant in the sense where I believe a couple years ago it used to be 25%, so it's more significant in nature, which allows TriMet to take a closer look at the potential impacts that a change, either increase or reduction, may have on the communities that we serve. So just to reiterate, there are 14 proposed service changes in the FY19 service proposal. 12 out of the 14, symbolized by the green check mark, meet the major service change, either being a change in span, frequency, or hours, as well as being a newly established line, and line 24, which is being, or line 4 rather, is being split into two lines. So when a major service change is met, it constitutes an additional analysis to, getting ahead of myself, just takes we'll take a closer look at the impacts that it may have within a service area. So TriMet's disparate impact and disproportionate policies have established thresholds to evaluate possible impacts. So adverse effects are defined as a decrease in the level of transit service and or decreased access to comparable transit service within that area. The disparate impact policy defines measures for determination of adverse effects on minority populations, whereas disproportionate burden looks at minority populations within that area. So there's different analysis for different types of major service changes. I will state that evaluating impacts for service changes are different for improvements, reductions, as well as other changes. On a basic level, the analysis for improvements determines which group stands to benefit from the increase or whether the change is equitable. A major service reduction evaluates whether planned changes are disproportionately borne by Title VI protected categories. And as far as other major service changes, because there's not an increase or decrease noted in the service change, a Title VI analysis is not necessarily required. However, TriMet assesses the impacts on vulnerable populations. So the line level analysis includes comparing impacts on minorities and low-income populations, as well as access considerations to jobs, education, healthcare, and food. When flagged at the line level, TriMet will seek alternatives to minimize, avoid, or mitigate any potential impacts. The details of the line level analysis is found on pages 9 through 20 of the draft report, and included in the Title VI analysis is the system-wide level analysis, which aims to measure impacts of all major service changes combined to determine how equitable the impacts are across racial and ethnic and low-income lines. A potential disparate impact would exist if minority populations benefited substantially less than non-minority populations. And the way that we measure this is to test whether 20% of the district's minority than non-minority population stood to benefit from the improvements. So this graph here in front of you shows the system level results of the disparate impact or minority population. As you can see, a slightly greater percentage of the district's non-minority population stands to benefit by the proposed major service increase compared to the minority population. So minority population is at 19.1% are positively impacted, whereas the non-minority population is at 20%. So where the 20% comes into play as far as the threshold or disparate impact threshold is it would be a disparate impact if the minority population was at 16% or less. So therefore, there is no disparate impact at the system level. So as you can see for the disproportionate burden analysis, low-income populations are at 23%, whereas higher income is at 18.6%. So there's a greater share of low-income population that are benefiting more than the higher income population. So there is no disproportionate burden found. All right, so the conclusions of the equity analysis: there's no system-level disparate impact or disproportionate burden. And as I stated before, there is a slightly greater percentage of non-minority who is receiving the benefit. However, there's no disparate impact found. And then a greater share of the region's low-income population stands to benefit as compared to higher income populations. And then lastly, there's no disproportionate or adverse effect from the one major service reduction, which is line 79. However, I will also note that the new Webster line will provide service in that area from where line 79 is rerouted. All right, so next steps is following the second board reading on April 25th, I will move to finalizing the draft report and then to include documentation of the board's awareness and consideration of the equity analysis. And then from there, the service changes will go into effect September 2018 and March of 2019. Any questions?
I don't have any questions because I'm going to come talk to you one day. We'll have coffee and you can walk. It's more complex than I thought sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, you take the population at the job site, or you take the population? Anyway, I'll come talk to you if you don't mind.
I welcome that.
Okay. I'll bite a little bit, but thanks, Carl.
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, just a comment, maybe to tack on to Carl's presentation. This ordinance before you today, it will be in the FY18 budget. Will have an impact of about $8 million. About 50% of it will be paid for through the 2016 payroll tax, and the other 15% will be the first part of HB 2017 funding. So just so you know where the revenue streams are coming from and the aggregate amount of impact.
Okay.
Other questions or comments on this? Thank you. Good piece of work.
Yeah,
and
a lot of it.
and great service increases. I think it's important that, again, you've said it before, but we'd like to do more. And what we're hearing from folks, it's great to hear. They want more service, more frequent service, and this is the first step, again, as you pointed out. So good work. I think this will get people on buses and transit that maybe had not been there before, especially some of the late hours and full service throughout 24-hour service will really, I think, show some good increases, I hope. So having no more questions, I think it's time to now open the public hearing to get any further comments from the public. I would point out that we did have a number of folks who made comments earlier during the public forum, and my assumption is those will be part of the record on this ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
Did Carrie have anything she wanted to say?
I was just here to answer any questions that you had.
So is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak on this ordinance that did not have the opportunity to speak before or wishes to add any more? Seeing none, then I'm going to close the public hearing and move on. So this is the first reading of the ordinance. We need to take note. We don't need to take any further action today. What you do have lots of information from the community in various meetings over the last few months. And I believe you also have a copy of the outreach report before you. And you just heard today, again, the findings of the equity analysis has been informed. So are there any further questions or comments from the board regarding the outreach or our findings in the equity analysis? Seeing then, though, sounds like the board is comfortable with everything. We'll continue this on for the second reading and possible adoption for our April board meeting. With that, unless there's anything further to come before the board today, and I'm looking at the board, is there anything else? Seeing none, then I will adjourn the business meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors. Thank you, and then I think we have one briefing item you'd like to get to, right? So, Mr. General Manager, do you want to introduce this item?
Yes, I'd like to ask Kimberly Akamoto if she could please come up. As you've met Kimberly before and made great presentations, she's our records governance manager in our legal division, and she's here once again to provide the board with the annual update on public records. So this is part of our continuing efforts to improve transparency and accountability to our taxpayers and our customers. So Kimberly, over to you.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning. Had to look, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes. So last month I was here to talk about TriMet's Records Governance Initiative, but this month I'm here to talk about my other favorite topic, public records. So 2017 was a very interesting year for public records law in Oregon. It brought what Governor Kate Brown called probably the most significant reforms that we've seen in multiple decades. So we'll start off with some brief highlights of the 4 legislative bills that passed last year. SB 106 ordered the creation of a Public Records Advisory Council and a new Public Records Advocate position. Attorney Ginger McCall will be our first Public Records Advocate. She starts next month and is tasked with mediating disputes between requesters and state agencies, and also providing training to state and government agencies on requirements and best practices for processing and responding to public records requests. She will also chair the Public Records Advisory Council, and that council is tasked with studying and providing recommendations concerning practices, procedures, exemptions, and fees, all related to public records. SB 481 creates new timeframes and benchmarks for responding to public records requests. It also clarifies the appeals process, and it directs the Oregon Attorney General to maintain and regularly update a catalog of exemptions. So, speaking of exemptions, there are over 500 of them scattered throughout the Oregon revised statutes. So this catalog has become a very useful tool. To that end, HB 2101 establishes a Sunshine Committee that is tasked with systematically reviewing all of those exemptions in the catalog by the end of 2026, and with making recommendations as to which exemptions should be abolished, modified, or let alone. Finally, HB 3361 establishes a new Chief Data Officer role who will be responsible for establishing data standards and practices at the state level. All of these legislative bills are aimed at improving governmental transparency. So here at TriMet, improving access to public records is part of our overall commitment to transparency and accountability. 7 years ago, we had already begun to look at ways to better manage public records and to help make the process more accessible to the public. Among other things, we created a dedicated web portal and an online form, which was eventually incorporated into our Transparency and Accountability Center, which we launched in 2013. The center provides ready access to the public to a plethora of TriMet records, and our Accountability Committee meets biannually to review the possible addition of more. For example, we recently added performance passenger census reports after noticing a trend in requests for those. The public has multiple ways to submit their requests, although the vast majority of our requests come in through our online form, which you see here. And also through our web portal, we have a public records request log, so requesters can go there to check on the status of their request. When we first began tracking public records in 2012, we had close to 500 requests. The following year, that number jumped to the 600 level, and that range has more or less stayed steady over these past 5 years. That works out to roughly 12 incoming requests per week. So a couple of years ago, Director Esmond asked us to compare our volumes to other transit agencies, and we were happy to comply. This is the second year that we've contacted the West Coast 11. Some of those agencies do track their requests a little bit differently, so although this isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison, it does provide some interesting insight. San Francisco MTA tops the list at 899 requests received last year, though I do want to point out that that agency is responsible for the management of all ground transportation in the city. So those numbers would reflect requests related to services that TriMet does not provide, for instance, taxis and street parking. The next is DART in Dallas. Unlike TriMet, DART has its own internal transit police division, but they do track those requests as a category. So I was able to remove those numbers to provide a more apples to apples comparison. Although our numbers aren't quite on par with San Francisco or Dallas, we still came in or ranked third among all of the transit agencies that we contacted in terms of volume. So that was volume. Here are the distinct categories of requests or types of requests that we typically receive. Litigation claims and contract-related requests make up the bulk of our routine identifiable requests. Last year, we saw a drop in litigation and claims-related requests, but an uptick in media requests. All other requests that don't fall into those definable categories are lumped into the general category, and those can be quite varied. Examples would include requests from Lyft customers for their ride records, random requests related to TriMet projects and programs, and requests from inquisitive fifth graders named like Abby, whose essential question, I will say, was what can Portland do to get less people driving cars and more people taking public transportation? I like to know that too. We responded to her request free of charge within 2 business days and provided 16 years worth of historic ridership data for her report on green transportation in Portland. We do receive a lot of research-related requests. For instance, a University of Oregon professor sent in a request. She was doing some research on the impact of wildfire smoke on transit ridership. So I kind of like to compare our public records inbox to a box of chocolate. To quote Forrest Gump, you never know what you're going to get when you open that up. It's interesting.
Nice to have myself in the same pace as Forrest Gump being quoted. I'll remember that.
So as mentioned in past updates, general video requests, which are those that are not related to routine claims or litigation, these continue to rise, and we're up close to about a third of all requests that we received last year. We continue to see an increase in what we call witness video. This is video that has nothing to do with TriMet, but is requested because our cameras may have caught something that is of personal interest to the requester. The vast majority of those are related to motor vehicle accidents between non-TriMet cars or unfortunately between cars and pedestrians. Media requests more than doubled in 2017 over last year, and about a fifth of those were related to the tragic incidents that happened at Hollywood Transit Center last May. Security-related requests still make up the vast majority of these types of requests, and they're usually related to potential crimes. So, for instance, vandalism at our park-and rides, stolen credit cards used to buy TriMet fare, and possible thefts of shrubbery. Last year, again, that box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get. Last year, we received a request from a business owner whose security cameras caught a man and his female counterpart, who, by the way, was sporting a large overcoat and wielding a shovel. They proceeded to dig up their shrubbery and disappeared down a side street, carting off their ill-gotten goods. Their cameras indicated that they may have come over a pedestrian bridge that was near one of our transit centers, and this happened very late at night, so the business owner was hoping that our cameras may have caught a better view. I was very curious, but I didn't have time to go through all that footage, but I do hope that that footage was able to help them and police catch the shrubbery bandits. So let's see. When we receive a request, it is logged and assigned to staff, and one of the first steps in the process is to acknowledge the request. Under the law in effect last year, public agencies were required to acknowledge the receipt of a written request as soon as practicable and without unreasonable delay. As of 2018, we must now acknowledge requests within 5 business days. In 2017, 99.5% of all requests we received were acknowledged within 3 business days, with nearly half acknowledged the same business day that it was received. Although we were 0.5% shy of perfect, I think we're on track to meet the new requirements. From there, staff will begin working on TriMet's response to the request. This chart shows the final outcome of all of the requests we received last year. We provided records and completed nearly 60% of all incoming requests. 15% of the requests, the requester either declined or never followed up. And another 15%, we didn't have responsive records. And in 8%, the requested records were exempt from disclosure. Of that, over half were from the media, which they typically will ask for records regarding an incident that just occurred, and that is likely under police or personal investigation. So those will be exempt. In those instances, we'll let them know that the records are currently exempt, but invite them to check back at a later date if they wish. Finally, a few are lumped under closed other, and those are usually requests where we've provided the records via another avenue, for instance, directly to police via our security department. Oregon law does authorize public agencies to establish fees that are reasonably calculated to reimburse it for its actual cost of providing records. However, we have granted an automatic fee waiver for requests under $10 for over 5 years now. Last year, we provided records free of charge in over 63% of completed requests, and that was up 2% over 2016. Oregon law also requires public bodies to provide proper and reasonable opportunities to inspect records. 10 business days has been the general guideline for completing a request, and this is based on past guidance from the Oregon Attorney General. SB 481 made that guideline into a benchmark. So as of 2018, public agencies have 10 business days to complete a request or to provide the requester with a reasonable estimated date of completion, and there are certain circumstances that will stay the clock. Last year, we provided records in nearly 2/3 of all completed requests within 10 business days, with over a quarter provided on the same business day that the request was received. But what about the other third of requests that we weren't able to complete within 10 business days, right? I will say that the majority of those delayed requests were completed between 11 to 20 business days, but there were a few outliers that will help illustrate some of the things that caused delays. So our longest request took 233 business days to complete. And here's why. As previously mentioned, 15% of requests received last year were closed out because the requester either declined or never followed up on their request. In that instance, we will usually wait 30 days, and if we don't hear back from them, we'll close the request. This usually reminds people that they have a request and they'll ask us to reopen it. So in this particular case, the requester asked for witness video. So again, video not dealing with us. They made the request last February. We provided a cost estimate, didn't hear back from them, closed it out in 30 days. 4 months later, they called and asked us to reopen it. So needless to say, we closed and reopened it another 2 times. Finally, this January, they came down and finally brought in payment, and we had the record waiting for them that day, and we're so happy to close out that request. Our second longest request was complex, and that one took 86 business days to complete. It was comprised of 16 parts, each of which needed to be clarified. A cost estimate was given, payment was provided in increments, and records provided in turn. A request for clarification on the remaining parts went unanswered for 30 days, and then we finally closed that out. So these outliers illustrate how non-responsiveness, complex requests, delays in payment, waiting for clarification on big requests, how all of these things can really affect our ability to complete requests. Again, finally, there are the internal delays. When we contact staff, we know that this is not their primary focus of their job, so sometimes there's delays in hearing back from them. And in our current environment, we really have to rely on institutional knowledge to know who to contact and where to get records. Searching for our records can be a very manual process, so it can take time to pull those things together. And that is something that we're hoping to address with our Records Governance Initiative. As you may recall from our presentation last month, TriMet has been steadily working to improve the overall governance of our records. We're in phase 3 of our Records Governance Initiative and are planning to procure an enterprise content management solution later this year to help provide the agency with better tools to manage its records and information assets. Implementation is expected to start in 2019 and will be a multi-year effort, but the ultimate goal is to improve our internal business processes so we can better serve our customers and continue to strive towards better transparency. So with that, are there any questions?
Does this information, do we send this information to the Secretary of State's office every year?
I don't think there's a requirement to.
No.
So we have it posted on our website, and we like to share information with the West Coast 11 because they were kind enough to provide statistics with us too. It's been interesting contacting other transit agencies to see how they're dealing with public records and records governance in general. I think a lot of agencies are also having the same struggles.
Okay, all right, just curious. Thank you, Kimberly.
All right, so questions, comments?
I just think one meeting, you're going to be the first person leading off.
I'm sorry, what?
There's going to be one meeting where you are the first person to give a report.
Okay.
This is the third or fourth time you've come before us, and people are looking at the watches. So you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Wait,
I appreciate
thank you.
Yeah, I want to compliment you on the response time for what you've been providing. That's pretty amazing, actually. So good work on staff to get that out. And it's a thankless job, I know that.
It's an interesting one, though.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
Okay. I like your attitude. All right. Anything else this morning? All right.
Great,
Thank
you.
I think we're
Thank
done.
you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Can we do it all again?
Can we do it again?
Yeah, let's
Just stick
roll
it.
again.
Start over?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.